like to call to order, please, the work session on Tuesday, April 7th, 2015 at 5 p.m. As I look around the table, we have a couple of council people who will not be here tonight. That is Vice Mayor Pizzillo and Councilman Campbell. So as we continue with the budget presentation for the remaining 8 departments. So we've already done that. So now we're at the Police Chief, Jerry Geyer, will now present the budget for the police department.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm honored to be here tonight to present the police department's budget for 15. First of all, I apologize for taking things a little out of sync, but thank you. Also, thank you to the directors who allowed me to jump in front of them. I've actually got my changer here so I don't contaminate everything. So. Our organizational structure is basically the same at the police department that we had during 2012. That we had last year. During 2012 and 13, we actually did a considerable amount of reorganization, went through significant changes. So last year, we didn't do too much changing. We wanted to just reinforce our best practices, complete our rewrite of all our policies, and we worked on several major projects. So the organizational structure you're seeing tonight is similar to last year. The police department has 130 employees. A $17.4 million budget, which is divided amongst 3 major bureaus, one being the Chief's Office, one being the Enforcement Bureau, and one being Support Services. Our total budget and personnel. Within those major bureaus, we have several divisions, each having their own budget. Administration, or what we refer to as the Chief's Office, has 16 employees. The Chief's Office also includes records, professional standards, property and evidence, the public information officer, and our administrative assistants. It also contains all of our contracts, our supplies, and our fleet costs are all included with that budget. Currently, the Chief's Office has 1 vacancy that's in property and evidence and is our forensic technician position. We are on our 3rd or 4th recruitment for that position, and I know we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, a couple slides later. Our next is our field operations, which is commonly referred to as our patrol division. It has the largest piece of our budget, has 51 employees. Currently, we have 2 police officer vacancies. We will have a 3rd coming up in July due to a pending retirement. We have telecommunications, which has 17 employees. We have 1 vacancy in telecommunications, and we are on our 3rd recruitment for that also. Community Services, one of our smallest divisions, has 4 employees. It's a small part of our budget. Investigations is another large piece. It has 25 employees. It includes detectives, narcotics, our task force officers, our crime analysis, and our crisis services. Specialized Patrol has 16 employees, and it consists of our K-9 unit and our traffic unit. We have 1 towing administrator. And that part of the budget is funded through monies generated from vehicle towing. The state mandates that we tow vehicles under certain circumstances, such as lack of insurance, no driver's licenses. We tow an average of 85 to 100 vehicles a month for those violations. The towing administrator is also mandated to have hearings regarding these towed vehicles. So also included in this budget is traffic unit overtime, as well as repairs for assorted traffic equipment. And our one-time supplementals, $579,000, rounds out our budget.
Yes,
so
Joanne.
Jerry, Chief, you mentioned 3 vacancies in patrol, more or less, and 2 in kind of field operations, in admin and telecommunications.
1 in admin, 1 in telecommunications.
So really, 5?
Will be 5 in July, 4 right now,
right.
Yes.
But that's pretty much it then.
That's it.
Okay, so that's
is a lot better than it has been.
Yes, I agree. And the 2 that you have in the academy right now, or when do they graduate? Or
and actually we're going to cover this in a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
But so you want to wait or?
Sure. No.
Okay.
I'll wait.
Yes. Our PBB, PD has 132 total programs. Our Quartile 1 programs obviously account for the largest part of our budget at 42%. Our Quartile 1 has 7 programs specific to Quartile 1, and that includes our major operations, such as our patrol operations, our 911 operations. Our Quartile 2 is the next largest part of our budget at 33%, has 27 programs. Quartile 2 includes things such as investigations, traffic and DUI enforcement, radio dispatching, and non-emergency calls for service. Quartile 2 also includes programs such as canine operations and narcotics operations. Our Quartile 3 and 4 programs have a much smaller portion of our budget. Quartile 3 has 47 programs. Examples of some of those include our property and evidence function, our public information, and many of our community outreach programs, such as our SROs, our SWAT activity, are all covered under Quartile 3. Also, all of our contracts, such as Sonoran Valley, our jail services contract, our advocacy center, all fall under Quartile 3. Our Quartile 4 programs, there's 51 programs there. It's the smallest amount of the budget. Quartile 4 includes programs such as, and the first thing, police certification. And we heard last night, fire had the same certification under Quartile 4, and the question was asked, why is that there? Well, basically, in the scoring criteria, it's mandated. It's incumbent on the city, or reliance on the city to provide, but other than that, it just doesn't have much scoring associated with it. So it scores out in a 4. It doesn't mean it's not important. Actually, it's needed. It's a very important program, just like several of the other ones. Other Quartile 4 programs include our professional standards and audits, and the majority of our community programs, such as YANA, our Special Olympics involvement, all fall under Quartile 4. At the PD, I can tell you that we're constantly evaluating our programs, especially Quartiles 3s and 4s. We're looking at costs, benefits, value to the community. In the most recent evaluation that we just did, we eliminated 4 Quartile 4 programs. Unfortunately, they were probably the ones with the least cost and FTE time associated with them. We eliminated a chaplaincy program that just had sort of fallen by the wayside and didn't have the interest that it had. That had 0.02 of an FTE's time and about $2,700 in cost. We eliminated a clearance letters that we do with a savings of 0.01 FTE and about $1,000. Our youth commission was removed, very small FTE savings, about $8,000 dedicated to that program. And previously, we eliminated a faith-based roundtable program that we really didn't have any involvement in, probably shouldn't have been included in our list. But we're constantly evaluating those programs and removing them when they're not effective.
Thank you for being so specific and showing the programs. I think that helped everybody around the table.
Thank you. Our performance measures. First is our crime rate. Obviously, this measure is very important to the police department. It's very important to our community members. If we had a significant crime increase, that obviously affects our quality of life. It affects our sense of community and might indicate that we need additional patrol resources or that we need to reallocate existing resources. In our case, and the crime rate is based on calendar year, for several years, our crime rate continued to decrease. In 2013, we had a very slight increase, just like many of the other agencies throughout the country. In 2014, we had a very slight decrease again. And this is our Part 1 crimes. This is our violent crimes as well as burglary. The 22.7 that you see on the slide represents basically 22 people per 1,000 of population that we have that have been victimized. And what that means in the big picture is basically Goodyear has a very low crime rate. Our next is our Priority 1 response times. These are emergency calls for service. 3 minutes and 52 seconds is as good as you will find anywhere. Part of that is because the philosophy that we have is that we're all cops. So when we have an emergency call go out in our city, I expect our administrative folks, I expect our canines, our traffics, our detectives, everybody to respond, at least until the situation gets under control. And if it was just patrol, you would see a much higher time. But because we draw everybody to those emergency calls, that's part of the reason that's maintained so low.
Just to interject that, I get asked often about why so many policemen show up. Same way with fire. I always get that from people. What do they need them for? But, this is a really good point. The first one that gets there, and someone may be closer than the other one, and may be able to prevent and close down some of the scene before, the rest get there.
Absolutely. So when an emergency call goes out, everybody's going to respond. And we really don't know what we have until we get there. So it's probably not good sense to get there and start canceling other units till you really find out what you have.
And normally, what is the time frame? I know this is really hard, but before you do dismiss some of them to go back to wherever they were at the time?
It all depends on the circumstances.
Okay.
Part of the message is it's a perception issue. We don't want to have a significant amount of police cars at some of these scenes if we cannot have them. So supervisors know that as soon as the situation is stable, they know they can start releasing units.
Joanne?
So I know that you're showing us 4 of your key measures. How many measures do you have altogether for your department?
We have 10 measures in city stat, and then we have some other internal ones that we are vetting right now. Probably an additional 15 to 16 throughout all the divisions. We're testing them internally, seeing what they yield for us for potential inclusion in city stat.
So kind of as the same question that I asked fire last night after, the audit that we had on police right before you came, and then or during, kind of in between, and what we did with fire. Have you been able to go back to that report and glean anything that needs to be measured, because we saw where we were failing, or we were just not up to par in certain areas?
Right. Actually, that report was done in 2011 for PD. There was 36, 38 recommendations. Many of those were already implemented when I got here. The remaining ones, with the exception of 2 or 3, I believe, were implemented shortly after I got here, which has been about 3.5 years. Everything that we've done, including the couple that we didn't implement, everything that we're doing is best practice. So all I can say is that many of those programs, not knowing what they are exactly right here without looking at the report, the ones that we have changed to comply with the study obviously are best practices, because that's what we're doing.
Well, and I know you did implement a majority of them, and so, which was fabulous. But it's kind of like, now that it has been 4 years, do we need to go back and make sure that you're still in alignment with? And I don't know. Some of them may be unmeasurable. I mean, that may not be the issue at all. But I'm just throwing it out there.
Right. I can tell you, my feeling is that we are in line still. The things that we changed and the things that we're doing, again, are best practice, and we're doing them efficient and effective in the right way. So I am very confident that anything that was changed per that study, we are still. Our incoming call volume, this is important, but basically as a workload indicator to see the volume of work our dispatchers are doing. It's also important to see the amount of emergency calls compared to non-emergency calls that come into dispatch and others. The 95,113 figure that you see there represents all calls coming into dispatch, whether it's an emergency, whether it's not an emergency, whether it's a transfer to another agency, whether it's just somebody asking for questions. But we document every time the phone rings, we want to gauge that. So that's what the 95,000 is. We've actually, in the 113,000 target for 15, actually we went through and we've looked at the last several months, and we have seen a spike in the number of calls coming in. So that number is based on the last few months and the spikes that we're seeing in that amount in those calls. Our public records requests, those numbers that you see there, and what it means by non-digital, it means these are just paper police reports. We get requests for almost 4,000 reports a year People are extremely interested in sensational type crimes. Every time we have a big crime in the city, we get inundated with public records requests for reports. We get reports from citizens, the media, insurance companies, private investigators, attorneys, just a variety of people.
Breakdown in it, or is it? I mean, I'm really interested in the citizens side. Do you get many of those, or is it basic all administrative type of courts and requests? And I know I'm pinning you. I don't ask for it, but I'm just curious.
It's okay, Mayor. I would say about 30% of our records requests are generated from citizens who might be involved in a dispute. They want the police report for themselves. They want something documented for future action. So probably 30, and
It gives me kind of a good.
some months as high as 40% might come from our citizens.
Okay, thank you. Sherilyn?
I don't know at what point or if this is even an appropriate question, but I'm kind of interested in the Southwest Advocacy Center and your participation. Is that okay?
No, ask him if he has anything in the presentation of that.
There's not,
Okay.
but I'm fine with you ask that, sure.
Well, but my question is the $210 or almost $211,000. Is that the total contribution to the Advocacy Center
Yes.
from the City of Goodyear?
Yes.
And is it doing what we anticipated it would do? I mean, is it actually, as I remember it, that they were expecting that there would be a higher successful prosecution rate because of the nature of it all being done in one center and the comfort level of the victims and whatever? Is that?
Yeah, and I can reach out as far as a successful prosecution rate. I'm not really sure, but what I can tell you is, and I sit on the board of directors of that organization, and it provides a service to our victims, a mental health service, a medical service that would cost quite a bit more if we didn't have the ability, and to have the one-stop shop there, where we have doctors and we have psychologists and counselors and everybody in-house is far better than having to go different places with our victims and telling multiple stories. So it serves a fantastic purpose.
I understand that, but it just I was involved in it at the very beginning, and it seemed to me that this, I think it was Mesa that had the successful one initially, and that they were touting that was one of their big successes, is that they were getting more witnesses to agree to testify and that kind of thing, and so it was getting offenders off the streets.
Sure.
And I was just curious if that had been, if those statistics are still remaining true.
That'd be easy to find out.
Any other? Go ahead.
Our efficiencies, first of all, is our New World System updates. And actually, this is still a work in progress. Our New World System is our computer-aided dispatch. It's our records management system. Everything we do, from patrol officers to dispatchers to property and evidence, is all basically guided by this New World Systems. When we started the upgrades, we were 5 upgrades behind. Now with the upgrade, the system is much more user-friendly for officers as they use their computers as far as the programs and what they see. We're able to have quicker responses to their inquiries. We were able to add different modules. For example, there's an inventory and equipment module that allows us to better track assets. And again, it's some of those modules are in the beginning stages, but it provides a lot of opportunity. It allows officers to remain in the field because they can do more research now on their computers than they could before. So obviously, it has resulted in efficiencies. It's difficult to quantify as to what exactly that may be. It's still a work in progress. We haven't implemented the program totally yet. So, hopefully as we go, into the near future, we'll be able to come up with some quantifiable data.
Joanne?
So you said that it hadn't had 5 upgrades. And so you're getting back in alignment with it all, which is wonderful. It sounds good. what prevents this from happening again? I mean, do you have a body that's assigned so this, 5 upgrades later won't happen again type of thing?
Councilmember, what will prevent this from happening again is we have a fantastic partnership with ITS, and we have a business analyst assigned to the police department who works with a technology team in the PD that we did not have in place previously. So we've put the foundations of great process in place, established fantastic communication with ITS, and once that was done, we were able to really catch up, get people refresher training. It was coupled with a large replacement of MDCs. So we moved from older MDCs to newer ones. So it really was building blocks, better process, better communication, and resources that we didn't have all of that at one time previously. Now that it's all in place, I can't foresee any future issues.
And we have those fantastic partnerships now where that won't be an issue. Our property and evidence improvements. Thanks to council, we have a beautiful new evidence facility now where we can properly house our evidence, and we have plenty of room to grow. It's obviously much more efficient. It saves time, basically having everything under one roof rather than having things in different locations. Our evidence no longer runs the risk of being compromised due to our facility. This, again, well, we also have, in the next couple months, I know I'm going to talk about this later, we will be moving our impound yard and taking over the old fleet facility. It's been renovated somewhat, and we'll be using that as our impound yard for our vehicles. And I'll talk about that more. But obviously, difficult to quantify as how that building, but obviously it is an efficiency, and it's much more user-friendly having everything under one roof. Our Power DMS is our policy management system. Before Power DMS, every time we changed or developed a new policy, it was hard copied. And hard copies had to be made for every single employee. Some policies are 10 or 15 pages long. So every change, and we're changing stuff and tweaking stuff all the time, resulted in paper copies being sent to everybody. They had to sign an acknowledgement that it had to go back. It had to be loaded. The data had to be put in the system so we could ensure that our officers and our personnel were reviewing their policies. Now it's all electronic. We go in, we can tweak policies, we can put in new policies. The system sends an email out to every officer saying that you have a new policy. It gives them very quick deadlines to go in, review the policy. They have to verify who they are, sign that they read it, that they understand it. That sets up our tracking system. We get alerts when an officer or an employee hasn't opened and read their new policy. So very efficient, saves a considerable amount of time. Also, this is somewhat of a new program that we haven't completed. We're right at a year, I believe. But, just the amount of supplies and paper that we saved has to be in the tens of thousands of sheets of paper. So just an amazing program, makes things very much easier. Our supplementals. We spoke briefly about our forensic technician. Again, we desperately need this position. This is our third recruitment. Part of the thing is we don't want to reduce our background requirements or our hiring standards. In each of the recruitments, we have identified a person for the slot. In one case, the person ended up going to another agency. In another case, we lost persons due to the background process. So we just went out. We've got another recruitment in process. We've already identified and had interviews with candidates, and I'm confident that we'll be able to fill that position now. Our police officers, needless to say, this has been a challenge. We've done nonstop police officer recruitments for pretty much the past 2 years. We've had as many as 7 or 8 police officer vacancies. We have actually hired 6 or 7 laterals meaning those who are certified with other agencies, in the past year. However, we've had that many employees leave our agency for a variety of reasons. I can tell you we just hired 2 cadets who started yesterday. They will be going to the academy in a week or 2. We've got 1 other that was hired back at the beginning of March. He's already in an academy. But now our problem is we're actually losing academy slots and can't get them because the larger police agencies are taking up all the slots. So, we did our best with laterals, and what would happen is, and we've talked about this before, we would get 60 or 70 that would apply. By the time we went through the testing process, we would be down to 10. By the time we went through the background, we maybe could hire 1. And it was pretty constant that way. So we said, well, let's give the cadets a try. Maybe there's somebody in Goodyear that's been raised here that would love to be a police officer. There you go.
Yeah.
But we found the same exact thing. We had 200 and something the first recruitment. We had close to 300 the second recruitment. First recruitment, we got 1.
Wow.
This one, we got 2.
Wow.
So, nothing changes there, but I can tell you that it's my hope come July 1st, our hiring will get easier for laterals. We know of several laterals who want to come to Goodyear, but they also want a little compensation for their years of service elsewhere. Hopefully come July 1st, we can do that. And I think our hiring issues may be over at that time. I think we will have an abundance of laterals, once we can give them a step or 2 in the hiring process.
And maybe this doesn't come into play, but when you look at laterals, and you kind of touched on it, that when laterals come to us, depending on how many years they come to us with, we have to look at their retirement and this and that. I mean, is there a point when you say they're too close to retirement, we want to keep it 10 years below? Or, I mean, do you look at any of that? Is that ever, or is it doesn't matter? It's just about the person itself. And I'm just curious how that works.
Obviously, I think we want to look at age and things like that.
Well, not
so
if age,
I think everybody will be given a fair opportunity. And I can tell you that of the 6 or 7 we've hired, the average is mostly around 3 to 4 years.
3 to 4 years.
Seem to be fine.
Gotcha.
There has been a couple that one was 10 years. Those people have cashed out. So when they come here, cash their retirement out, they start at the beginning.
Well, and age, that's not even what I was thinking. I was just thinking because 20 years is retirement. I mean,
it is.
Right. You could be, I don't know, 42 or something. I mean, that's certainly not retirement age,
yeah.
but I guess in government years that is. So interesting. Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Mayor? Oh, Sherry? I'm sorry. You look this way once.
And this is about the hiring. Is there anything that we can do or you need from us to help? And is there any, because you said in July, are your staffing levels okay, or do you proceed other than what's here that we're going to need more people as we grow? Because you really haven't grown your patrol that much in the last several years.
No, I think there will be a time in the future that I come and ask for more police officers. I can tell you, for the time being, we're going to be fine once we get our positions filled. And I'm going to talk in another slide or so. Talk about our injuries and our people on light duty, and that's what's affected things, more so than this. We constantly average, 4 to 6 officers injured at any one time. That could be on-duty injuries, it could be off-duty injuries, whatever. So when you've got 6 squads of 6 officers and a sergeant, and we're missing 4 to 6 already, you're basically down 1 in your squads already. We require 5 officers as our minimum staffing for officer safety reasons. We don't ever want to come out with less than 5. And if we do, we will pay overtime to get up to 5. Anytime somebody takes, the way it is now, anytime somebody takes a vacation day, anytime we have to send somebody to training, which is, quite a bit, anytime somebody's sick or vacation, we have to pay overtime in most cases to fill those positions. And that's why we've had such a significant impact on our overtime budget this year, which again we're going to talk about as we go further. So,
Chief?
Bill?
yes.
How has 2 years ago, we instituted the community service officer program. How was that affected?
It's been wonderful. And I wish I had numbers, but I don't. I can get them. We do have them. I will tell you that they are writing hundreds, police assistant is the actual title you're thinking of.
Okay, thanks.
They write hundreds and hundreds of reports. The dollar amount is significant that we are saving by keeping our officers available for calls. You know, when you get, and now those police assistants have developed an expertise where they go to a fraud call or a very involved call like that. It's no big deal. They are so used to that they've developed a professionalism handling that type of call, and they're quick. They are wonderful with crime scenes because they do it so much, and it's a great program. You know, that's something again down the road that you know we might need to look at is increasing that. Two, again, it's really beneficial and do a great job.
Is there a reason that we're not perhaps pursuing that now, and while we're having so much difficulty on the other side? Is there a breakover point?
No, and again, I think you know our difficulty is coming to an end. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm pretty confident we're going to get those positions filled, you know, in the next few months, and I think we're going to, you know, maintain that. And you know, it's my hope that we'll have an abundance of laterals, which I'm confident we will. And you know, on a list just waiting to come. So as soon as somebody leaves, we'll have somebody ready to step in, and we'll have the downtime associated with that.
Okay, thanks.
We received a supplemental for building projects. We just talked about our vehicle impound lot. We have right now an old impound lot out at wastewater. We have anywhere between 15 and 20 vehicles. Some of those that are used in traffic homicides and fatalities, we have to keep for 99 years. We're mandated to do that. We're never going to get rid of them. So the old fleet facility will give us a place where we have plenty of room to store vehicles and do what we need to do there for many years to come. We also completed a remodel of our police administration area at the Goodyear Municipal Complex. It provides us with a more suitable working environment there and additional room for our staff. We also had some SWAT type equipment, some weapons and vests that we've already completed and we already bought those.
Question. I forgot what's being used in this building now. The one that's on Litchfield Road across. It's next to the Circle K.
Justice facility?
Yeah, the old Justice facility. I didn't know if he knew that's what it was.
Next to the Circle K.
Yeah.
And that is where we do our training function. Our training officers
training.
are housed there.
Okay.
We have a couple rooms where they can have training, you know, classes. We do our patrol briefings there because that's got the largest room. We wouldn't have room across the street, so that's what we're using that building for.
Okay.
Some of our challenges and opportunities, our hiring and recruiting, we've sort of touched on already. And just so you know, too, along with the hiring and recruiting, one of the challenges that we face is that we need to actively pursue women and minority police officers. We need to increase our diversity. I recently brought on a temporary employee. She is a retired police manager who specialized in hiring and recruiting from Colorado. A fantastic person. Yes, she's wonderful. And she actually is working on a very detailed recruitment plan that we can put in place with the specifics of attracting women and minority police officers. So.
I have a question. On our Explorer program for police, I know Fire did one really geared towards women. Do we have a lot of young ladies involved in that program? Or
we have a couple.
now?
We have a couple.
Okay.
And you know, that was a great program, and it would probably be something good for us to go that direction too, and work on something like that for PD.
That would be great to see show them that this is a good career path for a woman as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I did try to recruit her to stay longer.
Did you?
Longer hours, yeah.
Yes.
She just happened to come up to me, introduce herself, and tell me about herself. And so she has a great background. So,
She does.
Yeah, but she said she has limited hours and what she wants to do.
She does. She does.
What's interesting is that, and I don't know if the word that you just had mentioned about women has gotten over to Estrella Community College, because my neighbor, who has, I want to say she's probably 23, 24 years old, has decided she wants to look into help with the police department. And she said, they need women over there. And so I thought that was really interesting that somehow she has discovered this. And I was telling her about CERT, and I was telling her about, the Citizens Police Academy, things like that, just to keep her moving in that direction. But somehow she's hearing this. The word must be out there somewhere. So that's a good sign.
Yes.
That's good.
And I know that colleges, universities, and some job fairs and different things will be a big part of that recruitment program that she puts together.
Good.
Our shift coverage and vacancies, we've talked about that some too. Our overtime was severely impacted this year. We talked about our employees out injured. As of today, I have a supervisor and 4 officers who are out indefinitely. A couple of those are long-term type injuries. We talked about our staffing. Again, as we go forward, I expect our positions to be filled, our police officer positions to be filled, in a few months. I would anticipate our overtime issues. There's going to be a transition there once we get to July. My expectation would be that our first quarter next year, we still have an impact on our overtime. But after that, I have the expectation that we will significantly increase overtime after that point with all our positions
I
filled.
can't believe that all police departments aren't under this same stress at this time.
There are a few.
And reading the paper on a couple of the councils and the reports, we're not alone in this. And I know we're not alone in being concerned about the overtime, because it comes up on everybody's budget. And you hear it. You hear the difficulty for government to constantly make that work. I guess
It's been a
for
challenge.
you and the budget. So
A fantastic opportunity we have. We're actually partnering with the courts for an e-citation program. And that's basically, instead of our officers out in the field handwriting citations, if they have a scanner, they'll scan the driver's license. It'll download the information. It's a quick process in the field. And as it stands now, once those citations are handwritten, we have data entry at PD. They have data entry at the court. So that will all be done automatically now. So there's going to be some significant savings there. It's a joint project. It's funded with 3511 funds, which come from our towing and court fees.
What was it funded with?
I'm sorry. The 3511 are our towing fees, and court fees will cover the cost of the project. It'll start out with our traffic unit, and we'll evaluate it and see just how much of the savings it provides us, and see if we need to go further. So that's a program we're excited about, and we look forward to seeing what those savings are. So that being said, is there any questions?
Any further questions? No, I think you're going to be fine. Did you have a further question?
He wants to sit
Go
here
ahead.
and
Well, I just want to thank you. I know you're not feeling well.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you coming in.
Oh, thank you so much for allowing us to jump in front of everybody.
So
Appreciate
I guess
it.
we're going to tell you to go home.
Okay.
I do want to say that I think we recognize at this council and for the city how important every employee is to our city, and we certainly want to make it easier for you to make sure we're getting our officers taken care of, and that it's not such a struggle if there is any way. I mean, besides background checks and all that kind of stuff, but we want to have this police department top notch in the valley. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Susan. Good job.
And
I was watching the technique.
Sanitizer.
Very good. Yes, pleased with that.
nobody clicks like
I
me in
know.
this
I
city.
absolutely. Nobody clicks. I haven't seen you for a while, but you haven't lost your touch. So just keep it up. Okay, so the next one is back to number 1 is the city clerk, Maureen Scott, will now present the budget for the city clerk's office. Well, I could have taken it to you.
Evening, Mayor Lord and council members. Thank you so much for the opportunity tonight to share city clerk information with you. We have 6 full-time employees in the city clerk's office, and our total budget is approximately $764,000, and we currently do not have any vacancies. We currently only have 1 division, but for fiscal year 2015, we're going to have 2 divisions, and that's going to be administration and records. And that's so we can better track the allocation of our resources in each area. As you can see by this chart,
Can I just stop you
Sure.
there? Is when record request, is that one of the areas that this will help you on? This person, the track 2? You know, we get a number of record requests.
yes, we do.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so is this, I just want to know that is one of the reasons that we're putting,
Yes,
okay, thank
definitely. We want to kind of see where our money is
You know
going.
where I'm
and-
going with that, but
Yes,
I want that
definitely.
information. Thank
It
you.
will
Question.
definitely help us.
Mayor.
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead,
sorry,
Joanne.
quick question, Maureen. I forgot. The one-time only supplemental election costs, I mean, typically you have the elections in your budget when you're an election year. Why? Is that because of the change in our cycle? Is that why we had to do the supplemental? I just have
Yes,
forgotten.
and I was going to explain that under the supplementals.
Okay,
You want me?
thank you.
You want to wait?
Oh, I thought you
Go
had
ahead.
bypassed it. Oh,
No, I
right.
have not.
Okay.
So this shows that we have in our priority-based budgeting, we fall in quartiles 2 and 3, and in programs in the quartile 1 we don't have any. In quartile 2 we have 18, and in quartile 3 we have 2. I'm sorry, wait a minute, hold on. We have 18 in quartile 3 and 2 in quartile 4. Sorry about that. And most of the services we provide are mandated by state law. So that includes the open meeting law, elections, and records management, to name a few. So currently we have 14 performance measures that we are tracking. And one of the performance measures I'd like to highlight tonight is a citywide records compliance with records and information management guidelines, long name. And we initially aimed too high on this one with a 100% target, and that was unrealistic. So we have since changed that to a 75% target, and currently right now we are at 61% in compliance with records management. And for FY14, we had a 52% result. So we're becoming more and more in compliance with records management through the city, which I think is absolutely fantastic.
Yes, Sherry.
Could you explain? I think that needs a little explanation for someone listening. They might just say, "Oh, they're only 52% or 75." Could you explain what you meant by that?
Yes, and actually what I wanted to explain is our records administrator created a scorecard. And what it entails is she goes to visit all of our city departments to educate them on what's needed for records management. So this scorecard, it includes having a file plan, preservation of records, destruction authorization, storage of records, and record security. So when our records administrator goes to all the departments, she's actually analyzing, do they have a file plan? Have they started a file plan? So she's only going to give them, how she breaks it down is each category has a point system. So for example, a file plan, if the department has a file plan or they've started it, she may give them only half of the 15 points. And so that's how she breaks it down and figures out how the percentages come about.
So this is more of a citywide.
Yes.
And so we're getting everyone in compliance as we go.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And so what she'll do is once she's visited the departments, she's given them an initial score, and then she's going to be going back and visiting and following up on what they've done as far as progressing through these different categories.
I'm sure with new employees sometimes that's not something that they readily know.
Right, and we do have annual records training through the CBT, so new employees are getting that, and they are getting that annually, just so they can get a basic understanding of records. And then we have records control officers in each department, and so they're kind of the lead of all the records area. And so our records administrator works very closely with them on any changes to the retention schedules, anything that's new in the records area. She works closely with them, and then they share that with all the departments or the people in their departments to try to stay in compliance. The next key performance measure I'd like to discuss is % of satisfaction questionnaires returned at good or above for records requests. And our target is 100%, and we continue to maintain that great customer service with about a 98%, and that was in fiscal year 2014. We send out a survey to every records request that has come in, and sometimes they don't fill them out, but the ones we do have come back, then that's how we get our percentage there. And just to let you know kind of our numbers, in 2012 we had 466 records requests. In 2013 we had 481. And then in 2014, we had 550. Now, that doesn't include courts and, of course, police department. And then the last performance measure I'd like to mention is compliance with the open meeting law, and that's for posting and advertising. And we work very closely with the staff liaisons for all our boards, commissions, and committees. And that's to make sure all the agendas and minutes are posted in a timely manner. And we also give open meeting law training every year to every board, commission, and committee, so to make sure that they're doing what they need to do. And then again, also very important, we make sure all the agendas and minutes are for the council meetings are posted in a timely manner. So I want to touch on some of our efficiencies, and the first one I wanted to mention is improving operational processes. And we're currently trying to shift quite a few of our processes to SharePoint. And this would become a central repository for a lot of our documents. So what's happening, we have one document in multiple locations on our G Drive, and that's taking up server space. So we're hoping to get all that into one document where it's located easily in SharePoint. And we're also using SharePoint to streamline processes like routing special events and liquor licenses. Currently, we are routing those through email, and so we want to create a workflow through SharePoint. And we're hoping that this will reduce time spent on some of these processes. We're also using SharePoint to organize our boards and commissions applications that we have received in, and we can use SharePoint and Excel to create reports in there. So it's been a great tool to try to start streamlining these processes. The next efficiency is election day processes. After the August primary election, which was a fun time, we wanted to improve our election for the November election. And so we opened up room 117 to create, more room for the citizens to come in and vote. And then we also added a laptop computer so that we could, be able to look up citizens' information a little bit quicker. We also met with Maricopa County Elections Department and the other cities and towns that had issues like we did. And we wanted to evaluate and see how we could improve the November election to create a better experience for the citizens. So we also tried to get more information out by using, of course, the InFocus and the website, and we did run some ads in the newspaper. Another efficiency is electronic agenda posting board. With the enhancements of the facade at City Hall, we're currently looking.
Can we just go back to
You
that?
bet.
I think that's really important that we get out, because on Martin Luther King Day, I had to give a talk at an event. And part of the person that asked me to do this wanted me to talk about the way we prevented people from voting this last time, because remember, the information that the county put out was incorrect, and all we were was trying, the help would be. And so it's really important that we continually put that out to the public, because it's still, so when Martin Luther King was just a couple months ago.
Right.
It's very important that we continually tell our citizens, what our process is. And maybe at the same time, explain to them what the responsibilities are of the county, parallel it so that they can see both of them.
Yes.
And that would be, so the word is still, which is very interesting, and I was surprised to see. So.
And that's one of our challenges I'll talk about in a minute too.
All right.
Yes. And so then on the electronic agenda posting board, what we're looking at is putting electronic posting board instead of the posting board we currently have at City Hall. And that will be a more aesthetic look. And we'll have like a TV screen there. So all the agendas will actually be electronic, so they'll scroll through. So it'll be an electronic version of that. And what's really neat about this is staff will be able to post their agendas at their desk. And so we're hoping that this will be a great future efficiency, as well as looking better at City Hall in the front. So. And then the last item I wanted to talk about is cross-training of staff. That is so crucial in our city clerk's office. And we have to make sure our agendas and our minutes are posted in a timely manner. And we also need to make sure that our council agenda packets are completed. So there are 4 people out of our 6 in our office that are trained on the council agenda packet. And then staff's also cross-trained in other administrative duties, so if there's someone missing, the job still gets done. And then to answer your question, Councilmember Osborne, the supplemental for the city clerk's office, it was a one-time only fee, and it was $155,000, and that was to cover our spring election. Well, since we filled all 3 seats at the primary election, we don't have to have a general election, and the election for the primary was about $73,000. So the remainder of the $81,000 that we won't need for the general election will just go right back into the general fund. And then I wanted to touch upon some of our challenges and opportunities in the city clerk's office. And the first one is increasing demand for records management. As the city grows, there's an increasing demand of records and a lot more paper and just a lot of increased amount of records to manage. And so, again, as I mentioned, we process approximately 500 records requests each year. And we're currently evaluating and researching possible solutions for records management software and how that can fit into our ERP system. So we're very excited about that. And this would be able to start managing our records more electronically and in a more efficient way instead of the manual process that we're doing right now. We're having to do everything by hand, basically, like retention and trying to figure out dates. So this is a very exciting thing that we're really looking forward to pursuing.
Maureen? Sorry. I don't want to just blurt it out. There was a bill brought before the legislature this year, and I lost track of it through the series that was talking about trying to identify abuse of public records request. And did that ever get any legs? Did that ever get out of the?
No, it never made it.
Never made it anywhere. Okay, thanks.
That's correct. And then, of course, the next one I wanted to mention was a challenge and an opportunity is decrease in voter turnout. And this spring election, we had a 21.68% voter turnout. We currently have approximately 35,000 registered voters. In the spring of 2013, we had a 24.4% voter turnout, and that was in the primary, and then in the general, it was 20.84%. So we continue to try and get the election information out to the public by using social media, the website. This is such a goal of mine to figure out how can we get the voters come to the polls. All of our Goodyear registered voters get a ballot in the mail, and I do want to make a point, though, since we have been an all-mail city since 2009, our voter participation has increased tremendously, so it has made a big difference having the ballots mailed to them.
What was the percentage before, if you know?
Oh my gosh, it was, yes, I mean,
14%.
Dismal. So
in
we've
one
done
year,
better.
in 2005, I believe, we had 674 voters. So it was very low. And of course, our registered voters have gone up, but it's been running 14% at one point. So very, very low. So when we hit the 20s, I thought we're increasing, but there's always room to continue to try to figure out ways we can get that word out to the citizens and get out to the schools. And so we really want to pursue that. And
Maybe we should start pursuing on Twitter and Facebook. We haven't used that. And that might be a way to do it.
Definitely.
Because it's millennials, isn't that what we call that? here?
Millennials.
Millennials.
Millennials. Thank you for correcting me. And that is the group's not voting. I mean, they're just
Yes.
not voting. They're not even opening the envelope.
So how do we
Door,
reach out
and
to those?
They haven't even done that.
Unless mom makes them.
Exactly. Yeah. So how do we reach out to those millennials and try to figure out to get them to the
Get out
polls?
the vote.
So it's
Maureen.
a challenge, definitely.
If you can send me an email, I have a very interesting research study that was done out of Princeton or Harvard, one of the two, that talked about why voter turnout is on the decline nationwide. very, very interesting. So that might help
Okay.
get to some of the things you're trying to drive at. But essentially, it's what and I think I shared it with you, Mayor.
You did, and I read that.
But the millennials are not voting. There's a lot of disenfranchisement.
Disenfranchised.
Yeah, they're disenfranchised. Just with everything that's going on, and the national politics are really driving it, and then we are affected by that very, very much locally. So, just remind me, and I'll
I will.
I'll get
Thank
that
My
to you.
vote doesn't do any good.
Yeah, that,
I think.
That's
Yeah,
essentially,
that's exactly.
That's essentially
what I
what-
got out of the paper you sent me.
Yep.
Just doesn't
Yeah.
do any good. So
yeah, it's
how-
18 pages, but essentially it comes down to one sentence. It doesn't do any good, so why bother?
What was
George's words.
our turnout for the gubernatorial one?
We
I
had-
know it wasn't much higher, but
For the general plan election,
no. Well,
what
yeah, I
we
guess it was
had
our
in
general plan.
November?
Yeah, we had the
That
general
was-
plan.
it
on
was
that one.
46.8%.
But that was with the governors, right?
Right. Of course, you got to remember there was other things on the ballot,
Right.
but that was still our numbers because that was still people who actually voted for our particular item on the ballot. So that was still they actually voted for that. They didn't leave it out. If they had left it blank, then we wouldn't have got counted for that ballot.
I wonder how that was for the state. 46%. I mean,
Actually,
it sounds really good, but I don't know.
I think that was higher. Our
Was it?
46.8 was actually higher. I believe the state, and I don't quote me on this, but it was probably around 35%.
That's
yeah,
what I'm
that's what I
So
thought.
that-
we were
so that
quite a bit
was-
higher.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay.
So. And then just the last challenge I wanted to mention was the city clerk staff attends election training every year. And also, I serve on the Arizona Municipal Clerks Association Legislative Committee, and we have conference calls every week with the Arizona League of Cities and Towns. And so we find out the status of all the different election bills that are happening during legislative session. So we continually try to get those updates. As a matter of fact, we had our final call today, and I believe there was 11 different election bills that actually have passed that we'll be watching or we'll have to implement and make sure we're putting them in place, I should say. So, and that's just elections.
I'm not making any comment. I'm going to be nice. Not a word. Okay. Any other questions on that one? Any other questions before she? Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, let's go to legal services, and City Attorney Roy Massey will present the budget for the Legal Service Department.
Moving right along.
And he just has to move from one chair to the next. Actually, you could have sat right there at the chair. It would have been all right.
No, we got to make him,
Little
feel the hot
exercise?
seat there,
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Now it's official, Mayor and Council.
There-
I'm
that's
at the
right.
presentation table.
There you
I
go.
have a legal question. Who do we ask?
Now I have to slide back over here.
Do you roll over?
Or I'll just ask myself. I don't know.
Is there a conflict of interest here? I'm not
There-
sure.
lots,
there-
probably.
uh-huh.
Mayor and Council, thank you for allowing me to present this evening. We've never presented in this form before, so this is a little different for us. And last night, for the first time, on the pie chart of the city expenditures, legal was there. In 10 years, we've always been other.
It's like when
Even other.
you can relate that when Goodyear
Our
when
1.3%
Goodyear was not
increase.
on the map. That's how we felt. Remember, we
I do.
show the weather and we never showed
Right,
Goodyear.
right,
I mean,
right.
you saw Avondale and Buckeye and
That's
nothing
right.
in
But that
between.
could be a bad thing if legal
know if
is
you wanna
done.
be on the map.
That could be.
I'm taking a
I don't know.
self-validation. We are here.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
I'm glad we got that settled.
So, organizational structure, there are 9 employees in the Legal Services Department. We are broken into 2 divisions. We are currently fully staffed. One position is in transition with one employee departing, but another employee will be joining within a couple days. So we are currently staffed at all 9 employees. We're broken into 2 divisions, the Civil Division, which is where I primarily serve, and the Criminal Division, the Prosecutor's Office. Prosecutor's Office is tasked with prosecuting all misdemeanor offenses that occur within the city of Goodyear. That generally involves traffic, DUI, domestic violence, assault, shoplifting, and city code violations, and they prosecute the cases right here when this room serves as the municipal court. There are 2 attorneys in that division, the city prosecutor, the assistant city prosecutor, and 2 support staff. On the civil side, we are the general legal advisors for the city in all matters that the city needs legal advice for. A lot of land use, employment, contract, negotiation, drafting, review, as required by the city charter. procurement, a lot of procurement work. Just generally, we work with all the city departments and have our hands in most matters that come before the city council. There's 3 attorneys on the civil side, myself and 2 assistant city attorneys and 2 support staff. Our departmental budget is approximately $1.4 million. That is primarily personnel. On the civil side, it's approximately $706,000 is personnel, $240,000 is contracts and commodities. Of that $240,000, $200,000 approximately is for outside legal services as needed for expertise in certain matters, usually environmental, water, real estate as condemnation work, any litigation that's not covered by our insurance pool. So that is as an annual budgeted amount that we keep should we need it. The commodities is training, general office supplies, that sort of thing. Prosecutor side, $425,000 is personnel, and about $33,000 for commodities training. That's those sort of items. Priority-based budget. We have 28 programs. Priority-based budget required us to step back and think about what we actually do. We're lawyers. We do what we need to do. But the process kind of had us walk through and kind of break down our tasks. So it's kind of interesting that we came up with 28 unique functions within the office that could be defined as programs. We're a support department, so usually what we do does not specifically fit into the 4 council priorities as far as direct service to the community. So our quartiles are not broken down under that analysis, but more under the mandate analysis. And quartile 1 is federal mandates typically, and most of what we do is not federal. It's more city charter, city code, best practices by organizations. So that's why most of our programs fall between the 2 and the 4 quartile. Is there any questions on this page? No? All right, I'll keep rolling. The key performance measures. We have 8 overall measures in the city attorney and the city prosecutor's office. We highlighted 5 of them. The first is our goal on reviewing finalized contracts within 7 days of being submitted to our office. Per the charter, all contracts have to be reviewed and approved as to form by the attorney's office. So certainly any project that the city enters into, a vast majority require contracts. We want to get those turned around within 7 days because we don't want contracts stuck in the attorney's office because that's holding up projects for the city as a whole. Our target is getting 90% out within 7 days. 14 is about a little under 95%. We were able to achieve that. The criminal division is similarly, cases arrive in the prosecutor's office either by direct citation by the police officer on the scene, or if it requires further investigation or they can't locate the defendant at the time, they'll write up the report and submit it to the prosecutor's office requesting that charges be filed. So our goal is to review that document and make a charging decision on whether or not to pursue the case within 7 days of it being submitted to the office. And fiscal year 14, we were right at 6 days, so we're meeting our goal in that performance measure as well. Third performance measures in the criminal division, days to respond to initial discovery requests. Usually when there's an attorney involved in a prosecution case, they will request all discovery in the matter. Our goal is to get that processed and returned and out within 7 days, and we're running at about 4 days under the 14 fiscal year. Fourth is the conduct internal departmental trainings. Our goal has been 20 hours, and you'll see in calendar year or fiscal year 14, we were significantly above that. There are reasons for that, although I think we will look at perhaps adjusting that target next year. Probably, I would guess, around 30 hours. In 14, we typically, historically, have provided quite a bit of training to the police department, usually on search and seizure, an annual requirement, and a case law update. We provided that in 14, I think it was about 21 hours to the police department. In addition, last year we provided a number of hours to the fire department, 66 hours, and a lot of that was on professional standards and on post-exposure processes. So anytime a firefighter is exposed to bodily fluids, there is a process to get a warrant to get blood drawn from that individual to test to make sure they weren't exposed to a hazardous material. So we went through and trained the fire department on that, and that was a significant spike in our hours. The other major component was 9 hours to all supervisors in the city on employment law matters. We are going to continue that program this year. Last year we did basically employee supervision and discipline. We're going to be looking at fair labor standards and wages and hours this year. So again, I think about 30 hours would probably be our target next year. The 20 hours you normally give to the police department plus the supervisor training. I don't know that we're going to have the amount of hours at the fire department that we had last year.
Gwen?
I find that very good for our city, and I'm sure that there is some kind of, with that measurement, I bet we would see somewhere where you saw where that outcome was beneficial to the city, that those trainings are preventing liability for us somewhere down the line. But I guess my question on this would be, you obviously really delved in there and put a lot of hours in because you were trying to bring everybody back up to date. And so going forward, I would think that with new police officers or with new fire people, that just even when they're going through Neo, Geo, whatever you call it, Neo, that
They have GO too. If they're new.
but that you would be part of that new process. That, if it's just half an hour for the new person, that you are keeping everybody up to date. Obviously every year some law will change that you will need to bring the supervisors up to date on. But I would think that just as part of keeping the whole group that missed your great hours a year before because they're new employees, that would be beneficial just to keep them all on track is my thought.
That might be an hour. I think it'd be interesting to see what we can compress into maybe an hour. I think you're right on the benefits. It's hard to measure the litigation you avoided, but the goal is, especially like the employment law and the supervision and the employee discipline, you want to at least make the supervisors aware of what the issues are. So at least when they're encountering a situation, they know to ask the question. So we don't expect everyone to be an expert on employment law, but you at least want to, hey, at one point I heard something that, this might be an issue. So, that is the goal, just to raise awareness.
Jerry?
And in those hours, that doesn't include, like, if a supervisor, somebody comes to you or one of your attorneys and says, I have this specific question, and asks you the question ahead of time.
We're not including those. These are the formal training sessions.
Okay.
Right. Let's see
Here.
Yes, Bill, I'm sorry.
Rourke, on the percentage of finalized contracts renewed within 7 days, I understand that there's to get to the word finalized can be a very long road. And sometimes it's that road that becomes more arduous than the 7 days post. Do you track that road as well, or that path traveled?
That's a good question. When we were looking at performance measures and establishing the measures that was either last year or the year before, we looked at, what is the time to get a contract? And that becomes a very difficult measure because if we have standardized contracts, which we do for a vast majority of things that we do, you're looking at really just putting in the scope of work and making sure all the other standard terms and conditions are acceptable to all parties. That's a pretty quick process. But if you're looking at, and the one that comes to mind is perhaps the Northern Solution that we worked on, that was a 2-year process. That is negotiations and multiple redrafts of agreements. And so that, I think it kind of skews your data if you're trying to figure out how long it really takes to negotiate it and finalize a contract. So that was an issue we kind of wrestled with in establishing a performance measure. What's a fair performance measure that is generally applicable to the business we do, not the one-off that takes multiple years to get to your final solution.
I guess even to a certain degree, I'm thinking of the IGA that comes before the city. those usually come before us. So are those, they're not technically finalized, but they shouldn't be that complicated. They're not Northern Solution complicated either.
No.
And I'm just obviously speaking very generally. So that sort of how quickly do we turn that around? And I think it helps, at least for us, to understand what is the workload in the legal department. If it's taking forever to get something like that processed, that perhaps there's an issue with an understaffing component, because I think that becomes the source perhaps of great frustration among the city departments that, geez, we got this very simple document and it's taken a month to get it out of legal, and it's not anyone's fault other than workload. So I think maybe getting to that may help 3 or 4 steps down the road.
I think that's fair. It's kind of the trade-off in tracking every minute, which is what the private attorneys do, which is some reason that a lot of attorneys want to work in the government. So they don't have that 6-minute increments. But you also need to be responsive to that issue that you raised. Recently, we undertook the review of the fire and building code revisions. And looking at it, we knew that project was going to take a while. And for that reason, just to measure the time, we had the attorney track their time. And I believe they were over 120 hours that they put in reviewing, redrafting those codes. So that's 3 weeks of attorney work that attorney couldn't work on other projects. And so certainly that contributes to a backlog. So I think there's some validity to the point you raise, and it's something we can look at.
And I think that helps us because we evaluate you. So for us to know what it is that you're doing, to know that a project like that took 120 hours, to know that a project like the Northern Solution took, and I'm sure if you were to try to add all those hours up, you'd probably be into the thousands of hours. I think that would, at least for me anyway, I don't know how everybody else feels, but that would be very interesting to the point that it helps me at least do a performance evaluation on the attorney. So I think we've got kind of a dual role in this thing. So just food for thought, I guess.
I don't disagree. It's something we've actually talked about is tracking time, and that's why we took that particular project and say, well, let's see how long it takes, because we knew going in it was going to be a significant amount of attorney time, and there's going to be trade-offs on that too. So it's not an unfair analysis. Let's see, the last item, and I believe that is a typo. It shouldn't be criminal division. That is civil division, number of contracts reviewed. That is how many have come into the office. And fiscal year 14 goal was 600. Actuals was 787. And this year, actually, we're trending up on that. We are 696 3/4 of the year, as opposed to last year at this time we were 627. So we're about 10% up on that. So things are picking up. I think we've seen a number of other slides with presentations over the last couple of days. Efficiencies, we did look at restructuring client departments. In our office, each attorney is assigned to a specific number of departments. A couple of reasons for that. One, so the attorney can develop expertise in those particular areas, and two, so the departments always know who their attorney is if they have questions. We did look at the departments that were assigned to attorneys this year, made a couple of changes that we think made some sense. We combined the public safety departments with one attorney. They had previously been split. There's a lot of crossover between police and fire as far as policies and training opportunities, actually. So we consolidated those with one attorney. We moved the water over to the development attorney, because there's a lot of interplay between water issues and development issues. So we thought that actually made some sense too. So we did that in January of this year. Enhance our tracking and processes and prioritizations, really focusing on trying to get things through the department more efficiently. and with priorities that meet the department's expectations and priorities. So we're requiring that legal services requests, fill out the form. I hate to do that, but it allows us to prioritize projects. So that allows us to track projects and review them on a weekly basis and try to move them up or down as far as attorney availability and priorities of the departments. The third is related to the prosecutor's office. They've worked with the police department and the courts on a process to amend citations in the field to get defendants to court on the correct day. But that was a process that those three departments worked on. We had no supplements last year, so this will be quick. It occurred to me as I was watching presentations over the last couple of days, and something I always knew about attorneys, we only see challenges. We don't see opportunities, so we need to work on that. So all three of these, I think, in our minds,
It's never half full.
No.
It's
I've
just-
told Brian before. I know he looks for optimism in hires. I don't. I look for pessimism because we always want to. What is the worst case scenario? So, anyway, we will look for opportunities in the future. But I think all three of these would be viewed as challenges. Increased development. That things are ticking up. There's also a new paradigm on development, so we're having to rework a lot of agreements, infrastructure requirements, phasing. That's a challenge for obviously in all of the development services, but there's challenges with that, and we're working through that. Correlated with that, we cited to the contracts. They're going up 10% this year. Department sizes remain the same, but obviously workload is increasing, and as Councilmember Stipp say, we probably need to track that as hours so we can really analyze if we have the appropriate sizing. But that's a challenge we have. We had significant turnover in the department this year, about 44%, for a variety of reasons. But that presents challenges when you're understaffed because you have open positions. We're fully staffed at this point, but have had four of the positions turnover this year.
Besides Susan, I can't.
We had a prosecutor turnover and support staff member turnover. Then we actually had one promote. But that left a vacancy for a while.
Bill, do you have a question?
What's the opportunity for you guys legal to outsource some of your work? I think of engineering who can contact an engineering firm to do some very specific stuff. Is there outsourcing opportunities for you?
Yeah, we talked about that. Back in January, we were a bit understaffed because we hadn't got the new assistant city attorney on board. If you go to a private firm, the cost becomes somewhat prohibitive, and it takes them a while to get up to speed. So it's still something we're evaluating. It's trade-off on cost and trying to integrate an outside attorney into our processes.
I think one of the things that it's difficult to quantify, but the wait time that, as you refer to them, client departments, mm-hmm. We're not adding a cost to that. And, and I don't know it. I'm not familiar enough with it to figure out what exactly you could or could not I'm not envisioning the prosecutor, for example. I don't see that, and certainly negotiating on behalf of the city, I have a hard time with that. So, obviously I'm just curious if we've thought about it, and if not, I'd like to hear about it, in the future, not future like weeks from now. I'm talking months or years from now.
It's a conversation. I know a month or so ago, I sat down with one of the attorneys on development-related projects and looked at, on a project-by-project basis, whether it would make sense to send this out to another attorney, with that attorney not having the background on the history of the projects and whether that made sense. And at that point in time, it did not. Now, I will say, working with Mark Holmes, we did send a project out to an attorney to go through the 30-plus years of agreements with Estrella and that outside attorney, because that doesn't lend itself to necessarily have all the history. And so that attorney's been going through and analyzing all of the agreements with the goal of developing a master analysis of what's outstanding, what's not outstanding, what are all the obligations under the 30-plus agreements. So that's projects is 3 to 4 months in, but that is the use of an outside attorney where, frankly, there just wasn't the bandwidth internally to do that project. But that's going to be beneficial in the long run as we can kind of develop the history and globally look at those agreements as we move forward. But we are looking at that when it makes sense.
Rourke, I just want to say something. Really, Rourke, I think an opportunity really is your continued trainings, because that is a proactive approach to help everyone in the city not have some of those liabilities when possible. So that really is an opportunity that
I appreciate it. And I tried to be optimistic a minute ago. I wrote training opportunities.
Good,
So
good, okay.
Right.
He pressures you into it, didn't he?
So foreign to him.
I'm seeing the look.
And I think that's all I have. Do you have any
Any other
questions?
questions? Thank you so much, Roy. So let's go on to Information Technology. Director Dan Cotterman will present on IT.
Can we,
Well,
10
they you want it
minutes?
now? They put it in the middle of it, but we're going to bring you up to the table, and then we're going to ask you to pause for a while. Council would like to have a 10-minute break. 10-minute break, all right? Thank you.
turn it off. Yeah. There you go.
There it goes. All right. So we'll go on. We're at the municipal court. So
No. ITS.
IT. To IT. Sorry, but that's right. I had you up. I'm sorry. You were done. You sat down, and I assumed you were done.
Yeah, mister.
Okay.
When you say ERP, you say it all, right?
That's
Right.
exactly
Any
right.
questions?
Okay. All right, Dan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to present the IT department-based budget to you. At any point, if you have a question, please interrupt and be happy to address your questions. The IT department has 18 full-time equivalents with a total annual budget of $3.3 million. The department is responsible for deploying and maintaining all of the city's technology systems, and that includes things like networks, servers, desktops, phones, and all of the software applications that we use throughout the city. There are 3 divisions within the department: administration, applications development and support, and technical services, or technical support and services. I want to point out that software maintenance for all of the software used in the city is contained within that administration budget. So $900,000 of that 1.25 is citywide software maintenance. And then also new hardware and all hardware maintenance for the city is within the technical support and services budget, and that totals about $117,000 of the little over $1 million listed there. The final component of this year's budget was the one-time supplemental of $50,000, which was for a temporary contract technician that I'll touch on later on the supplemental slide. And we do not currently have any unfilled positions. Looking at priority-based budgeting and the department programs, these are just some samples of the programs that the IT department offers, and they're listed by quartile with their alignment with priority-based budgeting. Our quartile 1 programs account for 79% of the department budget, with quartile 2 programs representing 21%. We have a total of 25 programs within IT. 21 are quartile 1, and 4 are quartile 2. At this time, we do not have any 3 or 4 quartile programs. Represented here are some sample performance measures for the department. Each of these measures, the reason that they were listed is because they tie to the PBB programs on the prior slide. This provides us a way to measure and quantify how well we're performing with each of those programs. And as you can see, we did fairly well with the samples here last year. and we were able to raise the bar for this year in a couple of cases. For example, the Quartile 2 program of Help Desk, we were able to set the target for ticket resolution to 36 hours, whereas last year we were at 48 hours. And this is being done through a combination of process improvement as well as the temporary contract technician that you gave us this year. And this is one of those measures that we'll probably look at each year to try and see if we can tighten that up because that time there is a customer waiting for something. And so this will directly impact our customer satisfaction score if we can make that shorter each year. The asset replacement measure is new to this year, so we don't have any historical data to show you. But it's important that we keep our fleet of technology replaced when it's at the end of its useful life cycle. We know that broken and slow computers make it difficult for employees to do their jobs, and when their jobs are to serve citizens and the business community, that can be very frustrating. And so that's important for us to stay on top of. And the last measure that I wanted to highlight tonight was the percentage of projects completed as defined within the scope of work. And this one is important to measure because it's putting an emphasis on planning at the beginning of the project, which ultimately leads to a more satisfied customer at the end. If we don't put the effort into defining the business requirements early on, we have the risk of missing the mark when we deliver that to the customer. And so we don't always attain 100%, but this measure helps put the emphasis in the right spot and help us ensure happy customers at the end.
Joanne?
I have a question. So we hear a lot about cybersecurity, and I know you have recommended workstation security pattern updates applied. Do you measure or do you, I don't know how to put it this right, if you're hacked or if you have viruses, or are you measuring that type of occurrences so that you realize that, you know what, it's time to put more money into a security type of system? Yes. Help me out with this question. Sure. I think you probably understand where I'm going, but that's beyond, I think, than what this measurement you've stated here is. Correct.
This is more of a proactive measure versus, an incident or reactive nature that it sounds like you're talking about.
Right.
And we have partnerships with some security organizations that help us track those types of events. We get alerted. We have logging. So all that is definitely tracked and watched very closely. It's not something we would probably put up on the screen here because
that's fine.
We want to be sensitive to that, but certainly yes.
Certainly. Okay. Thank you.
And then there was a question earlier about how many total performance measures the departments have. So we have 11 total in the department. This year, we've been able to implement a few strategies that have resulted in greater efficiencies. One of those areas is in program management, or how we manage IT projects. And as you can imagine, we have a number of projects at any given moment that we need to manage effectively. And we were able to standardize the tools and the process that the entire department uses when completing a project. And that's helped reduce duplicate work. And it's giving us better information when we're trying to take in new projects and schedule that work out. And it means fewer challenges with staff being overcommitted and unable to meet deadlines that we've committed to. Ultimately, it results in higher quality of work, less frustrated employees, and happier customers. So far this fiscal year, we've had a total of 27 projects, 15 which are completed and 12 are currently active. And these are not requests or simple things. These are actual projects that we've been working on, and they can be very large, including ERP is one of those, to give you a sense of scale on that. Cloud computing is another efficiency that we're now leveraging. The big example this year was the migration of all city email services to the cloud. I'm quite proud of that, and it reduced the amount of hardware and software that our staff have to maintain in our data center, less space, power, and cooling as well.
Sherry?
And I think that's really important. I don't know down to the penny or thing, but I'm sure there's a substantial savings on that, not just with regard to time and equipment, but then we don't have to update that equipment as much, right?
That's correct. We have one employee who had the ability to administer that system. And so If we were going to continue to offer that service internally, we would have to invest in training not only that person on the next version, but also somebody to be their backup in case they weren't available. And it requires a lot of maintenance to keep an email system healthy, so it's definitely labor intensive to do that.
Yeah, I think that's important for our citizens to know that how technology changes. There's a lot of savings there in man hours for us.
Might be something we want to get a little write up on.
Mayor.
Oh, yes, Bill.
You know, on that note, though, I think one of the things that we don't always talk about from an IT perspective is that savings piece doesn't always necessarily equate to, as we've heard, dollars. That because we're not doing this anymore, and this one person now they're able to do 3 other things because they're not committed to that, and I think there was a lot of misconception around the ERP discussion that we had earlier, or I'd say earlier this year, was probably late last year, that, well, geez, if we're spending $5 million on this new thing, we ought to be able to eliminate 20 or 30 jobs because we've got this new system, and that's not the case. So whoever is listening to this efficiency discussion, we really need to keep in mind that doesn't always necessarily equate to dollars, as it may work toward, other efficiencies. So I think, we've got to be very careful how we try to frame that.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And for example, one of the new responsibilities that came with the email in the cloud is managing that vendor. That is now an added responsibility and something we have to track an SLA with them in case they breach that or we had any issues. So it does just change the responsibilities a little bit, but it doesn't eliminate the need for them. Thank you. And just one last comment on the cloud. We are invested in the cloud. This isn't the first application that is in the cloud. We have several. Just a couple for your reference. The CRM system that economic development uses to track potential businesses is in the cloud. Our new LMS that was mentioned when Lyman Lockett was presenting last night, that is a cloud application. And then the Granicus agenda management system that we use to track all the council agendas is also in the cloud. So just a few examples of where we've moved that direction. Next one is just a reminder for you, but we were able to save $503,700 as a result of combining procurement for some IT infrastructure recently. And significant savings. We'll continue to look for those opportunities in the future, but very, very happy with that. Like all departments across the city, we're implementing Lean into the way we run our business. In the IT world, this is very similar to something called continuous improvement in our governance model. So this is already kind of built into the way that we operate. But we are starting to see some savings, efficiencies, I should say, there, and we'll begin to track those and be able to report on those based on the feedback that was provided. Lastly, we now have some city buildings that are wirelessly connected to the city network, and this is quite a change from the traditional either running fiber to the building or we lease lines from a vendor. And I estimate that with the 2 projects that we did wirelessly this year that we saved $81,000 over a period of 5 years. So
Say that figure again.
$81,000 over a period of 5 years. And this wireless will not always be the right answer, but it is an answer in our toolbox if that makes sense for the particular project. Looking at the supplementals that you approved for us this year, the first was 3 full-time equivalent positions and 1 one-year temporary employee. The 2 business analysts were assigned to our applications division, while the infrastructure admin and the tech were assigned to the infrastructure division. As I mentioned, all the positions have been filled, and those folks are actively working with their customers today. The Public Works BA, or business analyst, is dedicated to water, wastewater, water resources, fleet, and facilities in the public works area. And so that was a position we did not have previously and was much needed. So that person is learning the business processes and technology needs of that department and going to be helping them to leverage that better. And these BAs, as I call them, are the go-to person for those departments. If they need something IT, they've got a liaison that they know they can talk to and who can help them. The ERP BA is busy working on the project, as you can imagine. And the goal eventually is to build the capacity internally to support that application with this person and to not have to rely on a vendor for that. The infrastructure administrator is kind of a behind-the-scenes position, but they're still important and they're delivering service to our customers. So they're working on things like administering the backups of all of our servers and critical data, building servers for new applications, and resolving some of the more complex tickets that come into the system. And the temporary contract technician was initially focused on helping us get the Windows 7 and Office upgrade project completed. We have 2 full-time techs, and we had a need for them to be out in the field doing all of these upgrades, and we couldn't leave the help desk unmanned. And so this greatly assisted us in accomplishing that project. And then now we have they're helping us keep up with a volume increase in tickets. So appreciate that. Challenges and opportunities. So as we look at next year, the first one on here is keeping our systems and data secure. This will probably be on here every year, just the nature of technology and the environment we're in. It's important to us. We want to make sure that our citizens and employee data is protected and safe and never gets into the wrong hands. And so this is something that we're going to always be working on. We're never there, if you will. You know, it's always something we're striving for, but it is important and something we're very intentional about. And I see that as a challenge. The ERP project is a large endeavor, as you know, one that requires a significant investment of staff time. And until this project's complete, other projects will either be delayed or put on hold, depending on resource availability. So that can be a challenge from a resource perspective, but it's certainly an opportunity from the perspective of finally having technology that we've been craving and advancing us. Another challenge for us is the volume of asset replacements that we need to complete in a given year now. The city's grown to a point where we have about $1 million a year in hardware that needs to be replaced. And if you can imagine how, what that looks like, it's a significant effort to accomplish that in the year. And granted, that's dependent upon budget.
Excuse me.
But
Yeah, and I understand that because technology, it moves so quickly, and we had a period that we didn't, during the recession, really add. So I know we've got some catching up to do. Just out of curiosity, I mean, when we get a new fire truck, we sell the fire truck. What do we do with the old hardware? How do we recycle it, or what do we do with it?
yes, so the city has an asset disposal program that it goes to an auction, and then the city recoups whatever value.
Okay, so there's like a secondary market that we wipe it and then it can go off.
Correct. We remove all of the data from it, and then this organization either parts it out or sells it, and then we get whatever proceeds.
Okay, well that's good. At least we're getting something for it.
Some savings.
Yeah.
Also, the opportunity side of the asset replacements is it gives us new technology, and new technology requires less administration and maintenance. And so while it's a burden to keep up with the replacements, it saves us time and support. And our customers are a heck of a lot happier when they have a new computer and not something that's 7 years old. We're in an industry where things can completely change in the span of 3 to 4 years. And so the challenge there is keeping current with those trends and those changes, keeping staff apprised of those changes. The benefit, though, is it gives us a chance to do things better, do things different. And so I see that as both a challenge and an opportunity. The Valley, you may or may not know this, is a thriving IT market for employees. And we have a lot of national organizations here with data centers due to our great risk factors. So the challenge is we have a lot of name brand, household name brand companies in the area competing for those same resources, and it drives the wages up. But the benefit there is we have a large pool of talent here as well. So it can take us a little while to fill some of those positions because of the salary discrepancies, but there are a large number of talented staff in the Valley. Lastly, it seems as if the kind of interest in mobile technologies around the city has just exploded in the last year or two. And so challenging keeping up with the requests and helping people find the right tool to meet their needs. But wow, that is just a tremendous change in the culture in the 2 years that I've been here. So quite exciting to see that. And I know you're more productive when you have a tool in front of you and you're able to work more hours, or you have to do less commuting to do that. And so I'm very excited to see more mobile technologies deployed. And if I may, I just wanted to take a moment to say I'm really proud of my staff. We've come a long way in 2 years, and I just want to say thank you to them. So there wasn't a great place in the presentation, so apologize. I just wanted to make sure they heard that, because I'm sure they're listening tonight. That concludes my presentation, and be happy to take any questions.
Sherry?
I'll just echo to your staff as well that I know whenever I've had a problem, everyone is very quick. They're right on there. And I think IT is one of those departments that, because you don't see it as long as it's working, until you have a problem, you don't need it. But it really is the backbone, because I can tell you when your computer goes down, no matter where you are, you just want to throw it out the window. So there's a lot of all those people don't probably tell your staff enough. Thank you very much.
I'll definitely pass it on.
Add to that, thank them for their patience.
Yeah.
Because just some of us are not techies. And so they have come to my aid so many times, and I greatly appreciate it. And with great respect. Nobody made fun of me. Nobody, they just helped me with it and tried to make me understand it better. And so it's kudos to the department.
Definitely pass it on. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we're on to the next. So now we have a municipal court administrator, Eddie Cruz. He'll present the budget for the court.
Mayor, council members, first off, I would like to prove any accusations Mr. Luisi made against me yesterday. That's false. And if I were going to mess with him, I would have put his picture on the screen. The only thing that I can say is maybe next time we have Dan come up here, teach him how to use a keyboard, or maybe have Wynette. She's an IT expert. But if I may, forward, back. Okay.
That's funny.
Easy to say when you work on a remote building, isn't it?
First slide that we have before you is just our organizational structure with Judge Simonson at the top, and just to break down, we have total. Oh, hey, and I'm usually telling you guys to do that. Total budget is $1,004,163. Currently, we are a small department, so we only have one division. But as the court grows, we're going to actually sit down and break that into a couple of divisions. Looking in the future, we'll probably break down into case management, customer service, and judicial enforcement. Some of our highlights over the year, we did attend 2 veteran events. One Stand Up for Veterans, which was held in Glendale on September 27th and 28th, and also the Stand Down for Veterans, which was held at the Arizona State Fairgrounds on February 12th and 13th. And at those events, veterans were assisted with benefits, medical assistance, mental health services. They were provided meals, clothing, haircut, showers. They were also provided a means and where they could take care of some of their outstanding cases. We actually had probably about 4 or 5 individuals, and it does keep growing. We recently had one, I believe Pinal or Pima County has also done one, and they reached out to us to see if we could assist some of the veterans that attended there, and we did have one individual who we were able to assist with that. Also, we have an outstanding clearance rate. We haven't been under 94% in a long time, which is great. We did a language access plan, which helps staff up front and courtroom staff assist individuals who do not speak English as a first language. Also, we were able to get somebody, our court supervisor, Crystal Whalen, on the case standard committee, which will be in charge of standardizing all of the codes that the municipal courts use in the state of Arizona. We were one of, I believe, 25 courts that were actually to get somebody on that.
Joanne?
I'm sorry, Eddie, what is outstanding clearance rate? I don't know what.
The clearance rate, right now we are clearing cases at a 94%.
Oh, okay, okay.
Looking at our party-based budgeting, we actually have 14 total programs. We don't have any in quartile 1. We have 1 in quartile 2, 7 in quartile 3, and 6 in quartile 4. Of our budget, $7,000 is in quartile 2. Quartile 3 is $642,000. Quartile 4 is $227,000. Most of ours are mandated by the state, federal government. Key performance. We have a total of 12 performance measures. The reason I put these two up here is because I wanted to show the emphasis that we have on fiscal responsibility. We do everything that we can to ensure that we properly run the cases, but our expenditure per case, we want to make sure that we keep that down. If that, for some reason, exceeds our revenue per case, then we're doing something wrong. Obviously, as you can see, our goal for 14 was $83. We did go a little over at $91.21, but we did make up for it with the increase. Our goal was $145. We hit $215. Our efficiencies, I only put 2 up there. Well, we did have several. But apparently I went a little bit too lean on this. We're at one-stop shop concept.
That's a little joke. Did everybody get that?
We have a one-stop shop concept, whereas if anybody comes in on Tuesday, which is our criminal day, we handle everything that day. As they come in, they're arraigned, they will see the prosecutor, they'll be sentenced. We actually even have Western Judicial or counseling agencies come in, and we will provide them with the time payment contract as well. Everything, by the time they walk out of here, they will have had everything that they needed, as opposed to some other courts, they'll arraign you, give you another court date. It's our experience that the more people you let out, the less likely they are to return. Also, we have a full-time interpreter on staff. Not many courts have that. A lot of them have to go out. The reason we have a Spanish-speaking interpreter is because predominantly most of our non-speaking individuals are Spanish-speaking. So anytime they're here, we don't have to reschedule them, whether it's a civil, criminal, and it really assists us when they come in for orders of protection. And not a lot of courts have that. Again, the whole idea behind that is we keep them here, we have them here, let's help them out, because if they leave, chances are they're not coming back.
Well, I think it's really good, too, that you had the one-stop shop, because if the individual has employment
Yes.
and they find themselves going to court, sometimes that puts them in jeopardy on their jobs, because that's not something you want to give time off for. So I think it's a real good contribution to the public.
And one of our challenges and opportunities, educational mandates. The state mandates that every court employee has 16 hours of education. That goes for ethics, customer service, and a lot of times they'll choose a different topic, maybe technology. And it's difficult because right now there's only one organization out there that actually puts on a conference for this, which is Arizona Courts Association, which I happen to be a board member of. We do it once every year in April. We are looking to see if we can push that over to 2. The administrative offices of the courts used to hold one as well, but as times hit hard, they had to pull back on the funds for that. They, however, do assist us in that. They will send over instructors, equipment, the IT personnel. Another challenge that we have are legislative changes. Any change to those really can affect us. I mean, the changes to the DUI, because of some of the changes in the past, we are having more and more jury trials, which we also have as a challenge, but we also look at that as an opportunity because it's the only time that our staff members actually have the opportunity to mingle with citizens of Goodyear who aren't here because they were told they had to be here at that date. Also, one of the things that we didn't put up there that Chief Geyer mentioned is we are joining them for the e-citation, which will make things easier for us as far as entering the data into the system. Plus, it ensures that we have correct data because everything will be run off of their driver's license. And
Nice presentation. Questions, anybody?
I just had one.
Joanne?
You had increase in jury trials. How many is that?
so far, we've had since, I want to say January, we probably had about 4 or 5. Just from that time when a couple of years later, we could combine 2 or 3 years together where we would only have 4 or 5. And it just keeps growing.
Thank you very much. Okay, next is Fleet and Facilities Municipal Service Manager Mark Flynn to present. Mark? Good evening.
I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you this evening. Municipal Services, the internal side of Public Works, if you will, represents 3 divisions: Fleet, Administration, and the Facilities Group. And as you can see in the organizational structure, that's made up of 19 total FTEs with a total budget of about $4.67 million. We also manage the fleet replacement component out of that budget, but that's not included within that budget component. That's an independent allocation that occurs. And in terms of highlights this year, we actually have opened 2 new facilities this year. One being the fleet facility that y'all had the opportunity to visit with, but also the evidence storage facility on behalf of the police department. That's a new facility that we've added to our list of facilities that we're maintaining currently. The management assistant you see up at the top is an individual who is actually tracked and funded out of the administration line, but she provides service to all 3 of the entities: municipal services, environmental services, and water resources. So that's kind of a shared role that we have. But it does report administratively for supervision. It reports to the water resources manager, but it is tracked within that 19 FTE that are listed within the municipal services structure. The budgets are broken down as you see up on the slide before you. Public Works Administration represents about $361,000 of that budget. There are 4 staff members within that group, including that management assistant role. Facilities represents $1.7 million with a total staffing of 8 personnel. And then Fleet, the largest of the group, is $2.3 million with 7 individuals. One-time supplementals in this last year for us totaled $287,500. So we have the 19 individuals, and we represented a total of that $4.69 million budget. From the programs that are broken out within Municipal Services has no Quartile 1 programs, and we have very few Quartile 2 programs. Majority of our services are provided to internal departments on behalf of the city. So from that perspective, when we scored those out, the majority of them appeared in the 3rd and 4th quartile. There are a total of 37 programs within Municipal Services as a whole. 5 of those are represented in administration, 20 of those are represented in facilities, and 12, I can't read my own writing, 12 of those are represented within fleet and equipment management. That represents the budget total for that group, and the chart that you see is broken down to represent the budget totals within those various categories. From our perspective, we've had a huge focus towards preventive maintenance activities. So from the Quartile 2 program component, a major component of our focus has been upon fleet preventive maintenance. We've really tried to increase our attentiveness towards preventive maintenance, try to stop those issues before they become problematic for the user groups. Also, a significant amount of our resources have been devoted towards fleet replacement. It's been important for us to make sure that we're forecasting and projecting both financially but also for the vehicles themselves, so we have a good handle on what it is that's occurring with the vehicles, and we're always trying to eliminate the worst units within the fleet to make sure that we have the most readily available opportunity for staff who are doing that. And that also involves a significant amount of work related to vehicle procurement. We spend a lot of interface with the folks in procurement to make sure that we're looking at the best possible contracts, and we're looking at proper procedures to make sure that we're dealing with the acquisition of new assets, but also with the disposal of salvaged assets, with surplus assets. We want to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our dollar in that vein as well. As I mentioned, facilities has programs only in quartiles 3 and 4. Again, most of those components are internal. So things like facilities, security and access, building security, the ID badge system that allows for access into buildings falls into that category, and a large component of our building systems maintenance, things like HVAC and lighting controls and those types of things are going to fall into that category. In the Quartile 4 region, surplus equipment disposal, not only for those fleet assets that I described, but in many instances we're helping to facilitate the disposal of assets for other departments. We'll help move those, get those to the vendor, to the auction house for disposal, and then subsequently have those funds returned to the general fund. Custodial services, and then a new one for us this year was public art maintenance, assisting the arts and culture group to make sure that we're taking care of the public art that's created in the city, and also some signage maintenance for the right-of-way signage, the monument signs that are added, and those ones that have the identification for the river and the sunburst and the neighborhood and mountain logos as well, to make sure that we're taking care of those accordingly.
I appreciate that. I was going to ask you the question because I knew just recently we were fixing some of the Goodyear signs, correct? And so I wondered, was this in the past, we'd never seen that before, and I just wondered what it was costing us to actually do this. So
the work currently, the monument signs, the ones that say City of Goodyear, the repair for the signs that were damaged, we found 3 of the 11 that were actually damaged, and the repair costs associated with those were a little over $4,000. I think we were in the neighborhood of about $4,500 to not only repair the damage that had occurred, but also to refurbish and refinish those components. The paint had faded substantially from the time when they were originally installed, and then in 2 instances, the internal component of the lettering had come apart. Fatigue in some cases. We think one of them may have involved some vandalism. I'll be honest, when I actually peered inside, I actually found one of those pieces in the center, so we were able to use that as a mock-up to help create the new. But then we actually found one that had been vandalized, and that required us to remake the face of that with the vendor. When it was taken apart, it actually kind of fell apart on us with regard to that, so we had to fabricate more to that than we had actually intended. But we've begun to look at all of those monuments, those 11 monuments that have that City of Goodyear moniker with respect to it, but then also those other pieces that are delineating the neighborhoods or the sunburst or the river pieces. In many instances, they're a natural finish, so there's not a lot of work unless there's some damage or vandalism that might occur. We've had some that have been involved in automobile accidents because in many instances, they're in the right-of-way. So if a car was involved in an accident with that, we've had to replace one of those, I think out on I think it was on Litchfield Road where that was accomplished.
Is there anything we learned for future on materials that they're composite of what do we use? We're always okaying these things and really not knowing what's behind the paint. So do we learn anything from that of what not to use and to use? I don't know, recommendations?
We do. A tremendous question. I appreciate that because I'm intimately involved right now with the folks in engineering and the project management side for the construction of some new monuments. But also I work very closely with Guyleen Oslansky, Arts and Culture Coordinator, to provide feedback to see here are the types of materials that we see that are going to give us the most resilience. They've also been very gracious in coming to me to say, talk to us about what the structural components might look like and how we can make sure that from a maintenance perspective, we're not piling on maintenance activities that may or may not be funded. So we're looking at the types of materials, but also the types of finishes that are being utilized on those materials. The work that we're doing on these signs that actually have a painted finish, we're actually using an automotive grade finish, very similar to what you're seeing on an automobile in today's marketplace. But the idea had come up about potentially painting the concrete surface. Painted concrete is a very difficult component for me to want to focus on because it becomes a maintenance headache. It becomes a long-term operational component that then we have to maintain, especially with the UV, the intense UV that we see here in the desert Southwest. So they were very open to ideas of putting integral colors into the concrete so that it's not so much an issue of a topical surface, but the color is actually blended into the concrete. And then the quality of the materials, the thickness of the steel, where we're using a natural finish on those products, has really helped us to minimize what those costs may be, so that in the long term, we're able to do so with an eye towards fiscal responsibility.
It's nice to hear that we're learning
Right.
how improving the process. Joanne?
Follow up on that, public art in general. I mean, you hit upon the signs, but, you know, we have quite a bit of money invested in the art that's over at the Roscoe Park, over at the water area, and even the Ziz. I mean, some of those things really did cost a lot of money to put into. And so back to your question about, are we learning anything? So in the future, you see certain things that you can tell, Guyleen, that, you know what, that's awesome, but now that we've seen 5 years into, and I forget what the art piece is called over there at the water park, but
Water source at the dog park.
okay, is it withholding, you know, our natural elements to stay structurally sound? And so those are the things, you know, because those do cost a lot of money that we're putting into them.
For the most part, I can respond affirmatively that they are. And I'll be honest with you, I was a critic of all those bottles. I saw all those glass bottles as a target for a young boy with a pellet gun and a BB gun. I said, wow, that's going to be something I'm really going to go after. I haven't done that. I thought about it, but I haven't done that.
a little light into your past, though.
It does. But I'll be honest with you, you know, and I joke about that because in a previous life, I spent a lot of time trying to outsmart vandals. I was trying to come up with ways to make sure that we weren't experiencing those types of maintenance problems. And I'll be honest with you, we have not had one bottle failure, either shot out or broken as a result of that. There's a plastic
Have
collar.
we said that publicly before?
Let's not challenge him,
Yeah,
right?
You have a new challenge coming up.
But it was a big question of concern. But structurally, there hasn't been any concern
That's so
either
good.
to
Good.
the tile that's on there. Where I've seen more challenge and more concern has been with the lighting. The artwork that's actually mounted onto Public Works Administration, the shade structure, and then the mural that's on the wall, as well as the lighting that's on Water Source out there near Roscoe Dog Park. We've had some difficulty with regard to that, and in most instances, the componentry has failed, we think, because of the heat. So that's been the harder component for us to find those components that can work in those elements. And quite honestly, it's been something we've been slow to repair based upon the feedback that we receive. The Water Source is solar powered. There's a collector on that, and that's intended to go to illumine that in short duration. But there is a shore power electrical source for both the shade structure and the unit that's the mural that's mounted on the wall.
So those
at
are
Public
lessons
Works
learned.
Administration.
So
Well, and amazingly enough, there's a lot of studies out there that show where their art features are located in parks and things like that, there is less vandalism. So, and graffiti and things like that. I mean, it's just part of it. So you never know.
I think people respond to it quite well, and public art is probably meant to maybe challenge your thoughts and ideas. So I think in some instances that's working well for us with regard to that. But we are trying to learn from the things that we've done, how those projects have evolved, and what we can apply to projects in the future.
thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Mayor. Mark, I know you touched on the cost of the monument sign repairs. Do you have an idea off the top of your head what we are spending in public art maintenance?
In totality,
Yeah.
you know, I'm afraid I don't.
Okay.
I do know that we, with each piece of public art that the city embarks upon, we are getting a plan from the artist, from the fabricator about what they're recommending. But off the top of my head, I'm afraid I couldn't tell you. I'd have to do a little bit of research in order to be able to give you that feedback.
I'd be kind of curious what we're doing with that and you know, where we're headed with, you know, it's one thing to put the art up, but then it's another thing to maintain it.
Yeah.
And I think we should have an idea what the ongoing cost of that is. And maybe there's a comparison that, we can say, look, we've got $1 million worth of public art and it's costing us $10,000 to maintain, and we get some sort of comparison to the value versus what,
I'd be happy to provide you that feedback.
We might be able to have a benchmark from some of the other cities too, on how much art they have. I mean, this might be something you want to look into, say, city coasters like Avondale or Glendale, or and try to see, what is the cost of that to maintain all the art. And it isn't something it isn't that vital, but it might be something we want to consider as we continually add art to our city.
Exactly.
I'll be happy to research that and provide you some feedback.
Thanks.
Key performance measures on behalf of public services are primarily focused towards fleet and facilities. And a large component of our effort has been focused on the fleet group because we do have a significant amount of data associated with how we're managing the fleet. We're moving towards that effort with regard to facilities, but the performance measures that we've chosen to note here today, 3 of the 4 relate to fleet and equipment management, and the 4th in facilities is probably more an indicator of a workforce indicator than is a true performance measure, but it's one that had come to us from the consultants. From a fleet availability perspective, we actually track public safety availability and general government availability independently. Our target for both of those categories has been 95%, and we missed it on both fronts in fiscal 14. We've retained the target at 95%, and we feel very comfortable that we're able to work towards that. Our numbers are trending towards that right now, with the addition of a technician that you were able to support us with to aid in our maintenance activities. Another one that's a major factor for us that we use quite readily is fleet technicians' billable hours, the amount of time and the percentage of total time that what I call wrench time, how much time they're actually involved in performance of maintenance on fleet vehicles or fleet equipment. Our number has in fiscal 14 was 70%. And we actually, with the average of the mechanics, were able to outshine that in that year. We actually carried that at 79%. We wrestled back and forth quite a bit about the target for 15. We chose to retain it at the 70% because of some additional training components associated with some new equipment that we've added. We're going to see some lost time in staff from wrench time to time we actually have to provide them with some training. So we'll try to track to that number at 70% and see if we can bring that to fruition. On the facility side, again, more of a workforce indicator is the number of work orders that we're seeing in process. Because for us, it's an indication of the age of our buildings, the condition of our buildings, and it's a question that was posed to us by the consultant. We had 2,830 work order or work requests in fiscal 14, and we were forecasting 3,500. We bumped that number up with some of those aging buildings and also some buildings that we've added. I mentioned the 2 new facilities that have been added. You don't think of a lot of maintenance associated with new facilities, but there are some components that we want to make sure that we're addressing, and we're preventing them. We're addressing them at the small issues and trying not to allow those to become larger indicators. In both fleet and facilities, we also use a customer survey, a feedback mechanism for folks who are having service work done, both on the vehicles, but also in work done in the buildings, to provide us with that feedback. I'm going to be very honest with you. The information we receive on the fleet side, very consistent, and it's also very helpful in evaluating what our performance is. It's a little bit more sporadic with regard to what we receive back on the facility side of the equation. We tend to see the same kind of people responding on an ongoing basis, and their comments are rather succinct in that component. We also think that part of that is our tie to that work order system. We'll talk a little bit about some of the opportunities and challenges with regard to how we're moving forward, but the maintenance system, the work order system that we're using within the facilities component was changed from the old Lotus Notes component. 2008, I think, is when we converted to a company called FM1, system that the city had purchased. That company has exchanged management. New management has bought the company out now 4 times in the time since we purchased that software. And in each time, they've continued to support it, but there's been kind of a traction issue to make sure that they're up to speed and how we're looking at having those pieces come to fruition for us to try to make better use of the information. I think it's also been an indicator for us to say we don't have a lot of faith in the data, so we haven't put a lot of time in it. with the advancement of the ERP process, we see the SAP product as being a way for us to look at a stronger integrated system that will allow us to utilize that information from the get-go to a little bit more positive feedback to allow us to make mid-cycle corrections in the work that we're doing on behalf of facility users in the city. So we're kind of tying our focus towards the evolution of that SAP product, and hopefully we can improve those and increase our performance measures to help us fine-tune that system overall. From an efficiency standpoint, we had a supplemental for a staff member this year. One of the positions that was granted last year was a fleet mechanic. And this is an entry-level fleet mechanic for us. Came to join us, a recruitment in the early part of the fiscal year. He joined us on the 8th of September, 2014. And with his time and our focus with his efforts on preventive maintenance work, we've increased our billable direct labor components by about $42,000 in that period of time. We've also increased our scheduled maintenance compliance. We actually send an email out to users, to vehicle users in the city to say, your unit is due for preventive maintenance in the month of X. And then we ask them to schedule at their convenience to bring that in. Our compliance has increased with regard to that by 27% to make sure that we're hitting those numbers on time. And we're quite proud of that fact. The pre-em services, the actual amount of preventive maintenance work we're doing, has also increased with Nicholas Rosenberger is the young man's name. We've increased PM services by 25% in the time since he's joined us. So we're really proud of the fact that we can tie those to preventive maintenance activities. That allows us to look at extending the life cycle of some of the units that we have within the fleet because we're attentive to the needs of that vehicle to make sure that it can be roadworthy for a longer period of time.
I'm sure the facility has helped a great deal.
It has. It's been a tremendous asset for the group.
Imagine the difference of doing something out of the sunlight than in the sunlight, you know.
It's been a true blessing for those individuals, and they work hard to try to make sure they can keep it looking as good as it was on day one. The one other piece, just to not let go of it with that PM component, is our non-scheduled maintenance. Someone comes in and says something has broken or my XYZ has failed. We've also decreased the calls for service on the non-scheduled maintenance side, which for us, again, tells us we're catching those things before they're problematic. If a vehicle comes in for us for an oil change, we're looking at the other things, you know, is the air conditioning functioning, the window motors working, wiper blades, lights, tires, all those kinds of things. So if we can catch those things in advance, it means that somebody's not going to have an out-of-service component related to that. We want to try to catch it all in one shot. That increase, or decrease, I guess is a better way to put it, in that non-scheduled work has really allowed us to have a better product for the end user of those components. You mentioned the onset of the new facility, but that had next door the fueling facility in the wash bay. And one of the things that the advent of that new fueling facility has done, we now collect real-time data with regard to our fuel consumption. We can actually call up on the computer and know exactly what the inventory is in the tank. Remember in the old days, we used to go out with the dipstick and we would drop the stick in the tank to measure how much fuel was there. We still do that to make sure that we're on target and the computer's reading correctly. But now we can look at that information right at the computer screen and allow us to be able to process orders accordingly on a kind of a just-in-time basis to make sure that we're being good stewards with those dollars. The amount of staff time associated with fuel system management has decreased as a result of that. The one other component associated with that fueling is we're seeing a tremendous increase in the amount of use of the fueling system because we have the Voyager card. If you remember, there's a credit card in every city vehicle. If you're on the road away from the city and you need to have service work done or you need to buy some fuel or something of that nature, you had that Voyager card to be able to do that. Since we've opened the facility at the 157th Operations Center, we've seen a decrease in the Voyager transactions by 34%. That has resulted in a decrease of Voyager expenditures to 78%. And that's a tremendous savings for us because when you use the Voyager card at a retail facility, you're paying the retail rate for that fuel purchase. Where when we buy fuel and sell it back to the city, we're doing so at a wholesale rate. So there's kind of a double-edged sword associated with that where we can provide some benefit financially to the city departments as a whole.
So you're servicing and then you're filling the tank up, and then you can take it over and wash the car all at the same time, right? It's kind of like the BMW service. Is that what you're doing for everybody, for the fleet? That's great.
I often equate the service my group provides to that done by BMW. I don't know. I didn't even have to set that up for you. That was a great component.
Wonderful.
You know, there is the pressure washer that's on the wash bay site. You know, we didn't finish that facility. We ran into some budget challenge related, but there is components that we see people using, vehicle users using on a regular basis. But the increase in fuel purchases, the decrease in the Voyager use was a great component for us because it's at that wholesale level, and it is kind of that one-stop shop. People are coming in; they're either topping off before or after the service. The washing, someone mentioned in a review today with the lean process, you know, sometimes we'll want to clean a vehicle if we're trying to track a leak, you know, be it coolant or oil or transmission fluid. If it's all over the bottom of the undercarriage, we can't really see where it is, so we have access to that facility right on the site, and now we're treating it more environmentally soundly by utilizing the oil, the oil and water separators that are underground as part of that filtration process. So we're trying to be stewards environmentally as well to make sure that we're taking care of those things accordingly. Supplementals, I mentioned quickly, I'll just go over real quick. The fleet mechanic resulted in a very positive impact for fleet and equipment management. The fourth mechanic was added. He's done it at an entry level. It's a facilities mechanic, a fleet mechanic 1. And he's focused on those entry-level tasks, oil changes, tire rotations, those kinds of things where we're doing it in a more cost-effective manner and how we're delivering that service. A supplemental was also provided this last year for the facilities master plan, which is currently underway. A project kicked off in earnest in December of 2014. We've done extensive data collection with departments. We've also forecast staffing needs and facility needs based upon that growth pattern through 2035. So we're working now on trying to identify where those pinch points are, where we're seeing folks who are going to outgrow a facility, where we're going to have to look at adding some different facilities. The idea is to try to have the draft completed with review, staff review occurring later in the month of April, and then subsequently a follow-up presentation to council, which will follow that. But we're pleased with the way that's coming along. It's a tremendous amount of work and effort that's going into it, but we think it's really going to pay some dividends for us in the long run. And we anticipate that will be completed by year's end. City Hall Monument and the wayfinding signage was the third supplemental that we had received last year. And this is for the identification and wayfinding specific to City Hall. This will be mimicking what we did here at the Goodyear Municipal Complex. It's that illuminated signage up on the building. It's some monument signage to better delineate directions into the entries into City Hall. But then also the pieces that you see in the planters, we're trying to convert those back to a common theme based upon the signage work that we've done here in Goodyear Municipal Complex, but also trying to make sure that we're able to help folks make their way to the front of that building.
And I guess we've looked at the materials and thought about, are these long-lasting materials? What is, the upkeep on them and all that?
By all means. We're mimicking the choices that we had made here at the Goodyear Municipal Complex, which has worked very, very well for us. I don't know if you remember my conversation previously, but it'll have the channel on the bottom, like if you were to go out here and look at where it says council chambers and right. Justice Center, there's a channel, so I minimize the number of penetrations into the brick. A facilities guy doesn't like to drill holes in the brick. That's a water incursion location for me. Someday, sometime, I'd prefer to minimize that if I can do it. Looking at those types of things and then utilizing metals that have that automotive finish so that we can try to hold up to the UV intensity are all pieces that are working to our advantage.
Do we have a timeline on that?
That work is expected to be completed in May of this year.
Oh, okay.
I swore to myself I've got to be out of there, signed off, paid off by the end of the fiscal year. I don't want to deal with that one again, and we're on target to make that happen.
Mark.
Yes, sir. I'm
Bill?
sorry.
No. That's just for the wayfinding and the City Hall monument signs.
The monuments that are out on Litchfield Road, the area between GFC and Goodyear City Hall, and then the pieces in the landscaping, as well as the numeral address identifier and the piece up on Goodyear City Hall that will mimic what's here.
Is that?
That's not part
Not
of
the art
no.
is not part of this.
Those dollars were transferred to the arts group. It's still being managed out of my group or financed out of the supplemental that was provided at that. But that's being done in coordination with the artist and engineering through the CIP process.
So the supplemental, if I remember that presentation, the supplemental from FY15 was not enough to cover the monument signs and the wayfinding.
That's correct. It was augmented with some operational dollars from the facilities budget, and we've been working with the provider to look at ways where we can minimize that to take advantage of some economy of scale to lower those overall costs.
Okay, and the art that we talked about is a separate project.
That's correct.
Did we see them together though?
We did see them together,
But we only approved.
and we never voted on whether that was.
On the art project, or
Yeah. So if it ended up in the CIP, was that I guess that's a question. Was that originally in the CIP?
I may be mistaken with regard to the CIP. It's being managed by project managers within engineering.
By Regis.
Actually, I think it's Troy Tobiasen.
Okay.
I think who's assigned to that effort. That may be an overstatement on my part with regard to the CIP, but being done independently.
No, that's very understandable.
We had a little bit more help here with
Yeah.
the Deputy City Manager.
I promised him when we met earlier this morning that I'd call Bob at some point in the meeting.
Oh, there you go. Bob.
Bob.
It's time now, Bob.
It's time. That's correct. The last time it came before you, it was a joint project, and there were some questions raised. At that time, we were working with securing an artist, both for the library, and I think that had pretty well, the Arts Commission had approved that. And the same artist was being considered for had a great design, and we were getting to the point of negotiating the contracts. That's why you haven't seen it. The contracts were never completed because the artist had some health issues, and he was hospitalized for a while. That deterred it. And then also we've had some problems in terms of our concept was to have the artist be the kind of like the general contractor, and his type of work that he doesn't bond the entire project. So we had some bonding procurement issues. So we've had to kind of go back and look at distinguishing each participant. The artist would be responsible for the art, for providing the artwork, and then the erector contractor will be a general contractor, will have to be retained. So we're going through kind of reshaping that contract. Should be coming back to you within the next 30 to 45 days.
But the funding for that, where are we getting the funding for that component of it? Because the supplemental provided some of this. Mark has indicated that the rest of the funding for the signage came from facilities operations, which is general fund. So how are we paying for the rest of the art?
The art was included in two CIP supplement, or two CIPs, right? Two CIP projects. So we were actually, when we brought it to you previously, it was combining Mark's funding through supplemental processes and also the CIP for the art portions of the project.
So are those the generic CIP public art that we throw in there?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Just last, I was going to talk about challenges and opportunities. I mentioned earlier in the presentation the work order processing components and tying that to inventory with regard to the ERP process. We see that as a tremendous challenge for us as we transition out of our current systems, but we see it as a wonderful opportunity because of the integration that we'll have with regard to the city. Citywide facility and space requirements are being addressed as part of the facilities master plan, and we're looking at short-term needs. The master plan will also help us facilitate those long-term needs through 2035 is what that horizon is. Always an increase, at least in the fleet side right now, in the number of requests for service. We expect that to continue in the facility side as well. So that's a piece we want to keep our eyes on. And then, as you heard earlier from other presentations, applications for technology within our veins is also an increasing component. ways where we can deliver work orders to staff in the field and the like. So we're excited about seeing some of those opportunities to help us become a little bit more efficient in how we're delivering services. Happy to field any questions that you may have.
Questions, anybody? Thank you
very
very
much for the
much. As
opportunity to
always, it's
visit.
very complete. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we're going to go on to water. You wanna, okay, water and wastewater. And Water Resources Manager Mark Holmes will present the budget for the Water and Wastewater Department.
Oh,
Am I in the right one?
Sanitation is-
Am I missed
you know
one?
what? You
Sanitation.
don't have it.
I don't
Sanitation
have
is
it on
close.
here, so I'm sorry.
I guess you're off the hook.
Yeah, right.
I have number 7. It says Water Resource Manager Mark Holmes will now present the budget for Water and Wastewater Department.
Yeah, we're going.
We forgot Mark Siemens.
All right.
It's all right. You just don't have it.
I just don't have it on
Oh,
here.
you
so-
know what? It's flipped. It's
Oh.
You have it as number.
So I
8.
have as number 8, but Environmental Services Manager Mark Siemens will now present the budget of sanitation. So now, okay, so
Now, Mark-
really, it's your show. Just what would you like me to do it? You know, I'm just the moderator here, and I just read the printing.
He
If
wanted
it-
to put me to work.
If it's
I don't know
wrong,
if that was.
Who wants to go test the knowledge of sanitation?
Well, that's the way the slides are up there.
so how do you want to handle? Don't listen to
We'll-
him.
we'll
Who
go
would
to
like-
sanitation
who
first
would
if
like
you
to
want.
start? Okay, go out. Thank you.
Did you want to just follow the?
Huh?
Can we put the water wastewater?
Well, that's,
go.
he has to go.
We're going. Oh,
I know the feeling.
All right, I guess we're.
oh, there's Eddie.
Eddie, what are you doing?
Bob.
Okay, we're changed again.
So we're combining 7 and 8. Thank you.
Correct.
So we're going to water and
catch on
wastewater.
just
We're
like
going to do
that.
water
All
and
right.
wastewater.
There we go. Water,
All right,
wastewater.
are we ready? Is this on?
Go back. You're wrong one now. They changed.
Mayor and Council, thank you very much for allowing us to come before you this evening. We're going to do a joint presentation on water, wastewater, and water resources, all enterprise funds out of the Public Works Department. And Mark and I will be handling all the questions that you may have. As you see before you, this is our organizational structure. There are currently 45 FTEs that work within the Environmental Services and Water Resources Department. We've reorganized this department in FY14 to get into the water and wastewater disciplines. And of that, FY15 total budget for the water and wastewater and water resources is $10,817,000.
Just want to add one more point that on the bottom there you'll see on the right corner, 8,814.6 acre feet was produced in calendar year 2014. That's 2.8 billion gallons of water that was produced and delivered throughout the city's service area, and then a return of 1.1 billion gallons to the wastewater collection system to be treated and then reclaimed and used. So touching on the total budget and personnel, on the top there you see the water bar. That is for water under environmental services. Also embedded within that budget is water resources. The water resources budget total is $1.29 million. There are 3 FTEs, and as Mark Flynn mentioned earlier, we share a management assistant who supports all 3 division managers. Some activities we wanted to highlight in the water resources division. In 2014, for 2015, we ordered 7,229 acre feet of Colorado River water through the Central Arizona Project, and that was to meet a significant portion of our demands and minimize our impact on our long-term storage credit bank account. We also completed the necessary water resource analysis and submitted our designation of assured water supply renewal application with the Department of Water Resources. And we recommissioned the SAT site, the soil aquifer treatment site, where we're banking slightly more than 1,630 acre feet of reclaimed water from fiscal year to date. And then again, as you heard last night with Nathan, they began the delivery of remediated groundwater to the ballpark complex. And they're using about 30% of the total supplies of the remediated groundwater being delivered. So there's an opportunity for other beneficial use for that water supply.
And sticking with this slide, you'll see that the rest of the water and wastewater budget is there. And the one-time supplementals are all assigned, that cost of 1.6 is assigned to the Environmental Services Department. And we'll talk about that in the supplemental slide going down. One of the highlights that we began this year is the expansion of the Goodyear wastewater facility. We're actually replacing the 30-plus year filters with new disc filters that add more efficiencies to the treatment process. This slide is our priority-based budgeting slide, and you can see a big chunk of our group is in the Quartile 1 program. For the water from the Environmental Services, we have 40 identified programs. Quartile 1 has 6. Quartile 2 has 6. Quartile 3 has 20. And Quartile 4 has 8. Of the wastewater projects, 37 projects. Quartile 1 with 9. Quartile 2 with 8. Quartile 3 with 15. And Quartile 4 with 5, making up the cost of this pie.
And Water Resources has 30 programs within this piece of the pie. There are 4 programs in Quartile 1, 13 programs in Quartile 2, and 13 programs in Quartile 3, and there are no Quartile 4 programs in Water Resources. And now we're going to touch on the key performance measures. On the top bar is the Water Resources performance measure we wanted to highlight. It's a loss unaccounted for water. There's a goal there for fiscal year 14 of 10% or less, and that is a state mandate. So our goal is always going to be 10% or less. In fiscal year 14, we had 8.19% loss in unaccounted for water. In fiscal year 15, our target, what identifies as a target, it's an actual of 8.6. This is the performance measure is actually measured throughout a calendar year, not a fiscal year, so it's a bit deceptive there, but it's we've achieved 8.6. And these loss unaccounted for water is primarily due to when you have water main breaks or leaks that occur, and then the operators go out and then repair those.
One of the other performance indicators we'll talk about is one that we manage called the sewer overflow rate. We look at how many overflows we have per 100 miles of piping, collection pipes. Currently, right now, we service over 211 miles of collection pipe within the system. In 2014, our goal is always 0. You never want to have anything on the ground. However, in 2014, we had 3 separate sewer overflows that we had to attend to. We have since labeled these as hot spots. They're transition spots where a lot of grease and stuff builds up in these sections, and they're now getting more regular maintenance on those. So we're at those things.
So is this more commercial area?
Restaurant row?
Yeah, that type of area is where we get most of that stuff. So, the next one we'll talk about real briefly is the new water meter installs. We get our goals and targets from the Building Safety Department, and these reflect homes south of I-10. So we had a target goal, or goal of 638 in 14. We installed 503, and we're looking at trying to target 725 for this coming year.
Joanne?
This is probably a silly question, but I would assume that a most important measurement is the quality of the water. I would think that that's I know it's a constant ongoing, but I lost my whole screen. But I was just kind of surprised you didn't have that up there as one of your your performance measurements. So, oh well.
We measure the quality of water. We do hundreds and hundreds of tests.
Just for the public to know that that's always a key
first
performance measurement. Is that.
In the Quartile 1 program, the majority of that program is the water treatment side of it, where we have to process and treat the water to meet hundreds of standards, not only state but federal standards as well. So we're constantly looking at that.
You guys know that. We know that. It's for the public to always say that. As black and white as that may sound, is that it is.
Although I do think we put out.
We do.
To each every year.
Correct.
A publication. We have to. Pardon me.
Next month's In
Focus.
In Focus. Well, also in their bills. Don't we in the bills have something sent out and also isn't there something else sent out that you get in the home printed?
It's you're talking about the Consumer Confidence Report that comes out. It will
Maybe
be in the
that's
June. It will be in the June issue of the.
I just remember saying I can identify it.
Right.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you for the point.
Some of the key efficiencies we want to touch on, the first two are our water resources. Again, the 1,630 acre feet of reclaimed water has a value today of slightly more than $326,000, and that water is stored underground and waiting for future use. Also, with the use of remediated groundwater at the ball field complex, there's an estimated savings of approximately $200,000 per year. Of course, as water commodities go up every year, that savings will increase every year. Also, I'd mentioned previously in a work session, there's also the exemption the city received from the state regarding the exemption from replacing that groundwater. So we don't have to replenish that groundwater supply. So there's an additional cost savings of $42,000 based on the quantity of water used at the ballpark complex.
Talk about,
wait,
Excuse me, Bill?
I'm going to be more specific. Mr. Holmes.
Mark.
I can't say Mark, they'll both answer.
We're both going to answer. Bob?
Can you, Bob? Can you try to explain graphically what an acre foot of water is? We talk about that quite a bit, and if there is anybody listening, perhaps it's not as cut and dry as it may be in the course of conversation.
Sure. If you were to be standing on a 1 acre piece of property, pretty large size, and that acre of property was filled with 1 foot high level of water, it's 325,851 gallons.
Thank you.
1 acre, 1 foot. That's a good picture. So 1 acre, 1 foot. Okay.
And an acre is what, 65,000 square feet?
65,000 square feet, approximately.
So we'll touch on another efficiency that we're able to implement this year. 2 of our production wells have withdrawal authority limits on them, and due to high demands and other well outages in 2014, we had to actually pump these things past their withdrawal limits, which require replenishment costs. And in 2014, those costs were $85,000. In FY15, we implemented an Excel spreadsheet tracking system where we manually go out there and take a look. We track the readings every day. And then by doing this, we're able to then monitor the production of those wells and then use them only during the peak times. And then we're projecting that the FY15 cost will be 0 by just doing first on, last off type thing. One of the efficiencies that we wanted to really excited about is at the Corrugate facility in 2014, we replaced the old sand filters there with new disc filters as well, and we've actually seen a 20% reduction in the influent flow because of the backwash cycle that happens. What that relates to is an efficiency, adding actually more capacity to allow to come into that plant. It's not taken up by the backwash water. These are the same filters we're going to install at the Goodyear plant, and those will be in production hopefully by the end of June of this year. And then we'll be able to come back and tell you exactly what's happening with those as well, hopefully leading to not having to expend funds sooner than we need to because of the backwash water. So looking forward to that. I said earlier, we have supplementals predominantly in the Environmental Services Division in 2015, FY15, we were authorized 19 supplementals. All of them were one time for water and wastewater. They totaled $1.6 million. Of those, 4 of the vehicles were replacement. We replaced 2 trucks and then 2 internal site vehicles we call Gators, the little ATVs that the guys use to haul stuff around on the site. Several of the projects are still ongoing and will be carried over due to large equipment purchases that take long lead times. And so we're looking at carrying over some of these things. We were able to complete a couple of them. We're in design for the new block wall at Well Site 19. That's right outside the new Child Development Center on Van Buren. It's a little fenced-in area right there. We're going to put a new block wall around that. We bought a portable generator for the collection system that allows us to have standby power at the lift stations. We'll be able to haul that around. And then the other ones that are long lead items would be that new influent screen at Rainbow Valley and the new digester lid at Corrugate. And the last one is the PLC SCADA system replacement at Rainbow Valley. which will now bring all of our SCADA equipment into the same manufacturer of Allen Bradley.
I want to touch on some of the challenges and opportunities. The first one is the IWMP, which stands for the Integrated Water Master Plan, which I came before you several months ago, and we talked about the details of that. Well, that's really an opportunity for the city, and Public Works has initiated the Integrated Water Master Plan update, which is intended to define the opportunities for the city to really be poised for growth and looking at assessing the utility, the public utility. Also, members of the city's Water Planning Committee are preparing to review the various recommendations by the engineering consultants. So many things are being reviewed at this point. Another one is the utility rate study, and I would look at this as a challenge and an opportunity. Certain proposed projects identified within the Integrated Water Master Plan will be brought before Council for looking for support, which will have some challenges with it, and also obviously some of the costs associated with some of the projects. And they will be incorporated into the 5-year utility rate study. But there are opportunities, again, for poising the city for growth. Another one is the designation of assured water supply, our application renewal. And this is really a requirement, and this is an opportunity that, again, will, once approved by the Department of Water Resources, we'll be able to approve the various growth aspects and development within the city.
And last is, of course, there's nobody immune to not being part of ERP, so Public Works is as involved as everybody else is in the implementation. We do have some third-party software programs that are looking to be replaced. One of them is the Lucity work order system. And so we're working on the development of the SAP work order system and inventory control systems with the staff. And we're very much involved in that. And we're looking at this as a great opportunity to start to really capture some workforce indicators, as well as looking at inventory controls. And a lot of our parts are housed in various locations throughout the city. We're trying to get a real good handle on the inventory control, looking to get to just-in-time inventory on some of the bigger parts, so that we're not storing a lot of money on the shelves. And before I go on, I just want to do a shout out to staff, to our staff, who's really working hard at not only the ERP, but we're also involved in the lean training. We're one of the first groups to go through the lean training, and we're finishing up our group as one of the first group to go through that. All of these efficiencies that we'll take a look at will all go through that process at some way, shape, or form. So we're excited about that and looking forward to the opportunity to bring back some really good results.
And lastly, just a shout out to my division, my team, the leanest and meanest group in the city. Great.
All three of them.
Questions? Comments? Sherry?
I just want to echo what I've been telling the other departments, that this Mark and Mark, you guys leave two areas that our citizens may not necessarily think about until something goes wrong.
Or until you raise the price of water.
Until you raise the price. So I think one thing that we do have to keep up to, and I know the city managers and you're up on it, is we hear like what California's doing. They just put really restrictions in their water and everything. And I think it's just really important to let them know what we're doing and how we're saving water and doing what we can, especially when that utility rate study comes up.
I think so, and I thought your efficiencies, and when you talked about that, were very meaningful. I think it shows a sense of responsibility that we feel strongly to our citizens, and that we want to be able to be a good provider. But I think the word is out there. They understand what the trouble of Western cities are going to have right now with water. We're all of us, and so I think that's something that we need to make sure our citizens are realizing. And then, of course, I think we all want to treat our citizens well. So as far as rate increases, we want to, I thought we did very well on the last one. We did it in increments. We gave them lots of notice, could plan their budget. Because, somebody said to me the other day, you can't talk like that. And I said, yeah, I can, because it's the truth. The truth of the matter is our water bills are going to continually go up for some time. But it's how we handle it and how we are respectful of the citizens and their budgets. And we know this is difficult, but I think a lot of talking like this and giving them advance notice And I think our committee will help too. I think we have some very responsible citizen on that. You want to talk to Ann?
Oh, I was just going to say, I echo what George and Sherry are saying. We know how important you are, and I know I butchered what I was trying to say about quality, but it's true. I mean, the communication about our liquid gold of water, what it costs, how important the quality of it is, and how scarce it can be for us. And so we always have to be looking at planning to the future. And I know it seems that we cover all that. We all know that. But it's our 75,000 others that don't always know what we're speaking of. And so, I know it sounds silly for me to say, but we always have to be thinking in those terms that not everybody knows what we know. And so the communication is very important. But thank you to what all you guys do, and we appreciate it.
And I think repetition on this particular subject, I think we need lots of public repetition in printed form and speaking engagements. It kind of be something that we could pick up as a council to make sure when we're out in the public and we're speaking that we always come forth with something about water. I can't think of anything that is going to be detrimental to the public than that.
And I think it's good to highlight what we saw at the Cooks and Door facilities, how they reuse their water. And I don't know if that's something we're looking at as a city to do something along those lines, how they're capturing the natural rainwater.
I can't wait to see if that
I don't know if that
response will
works.
be on that.
I don't know.
Do you know about that, Mark? Marky Mark.
That could capture up to 1 million gallons.
Right.
Where'd that come
But
from?
think of it, that last
1 million
rain
gallons
we
of
had.
water.
If that one rain we had, that would have filled that thing up.
Right.
And that was a lot of lost water because Estrella was just flowing like, it looked like, the Nile River up there. So that's a lot of water just going downstream. So.
Yeah, it was 8 cisterns, if I remember right?
I think that's what he had around there, yeah.
Right.
So, that would be a really good story for us to tell, too. That would be a good thing for the In Focus to go along with the water article and the combination of it. So, of course, the only thing is everybody's going to get their tanks and put it in the backyard. Homeowners associations are going to call us.
You thought solar panels were a problem on the roof? Yeah.
So it could, but anyway, I think some good this was a great presentation along with all the other, and so thank you very much. Oh, Cheryl Lynn.
Well, I did. I just wanted to comment. This is not a subject that a lot of people understand. I being one of them, I'm having to learn really fast. But what I appreciated about your presentation is how excited you got as you talked about the new toys or what tools that are available to you, and even when you were talking about the challenges, I appreciate that. That's very meaningful, I think, to the people you're working with, and I know it's meaningful to me because I know you love what you're doing and are doing the best job you can. And I just wanted to say I very much appreciate that and respect it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for your support. Thank you.
Before we go, just before I go any further, is that it?
There's one more for sanitation.
Sanitation, okay,
Right.
thank you.
There's one more.
One more.
There it is. Well, once again, thank you for allowing me to present. I want to thank whoever it was that decided that sanitation is the most exciting one. Finished off with a bang.
Yeah, that's what it means.
I think it was Bob's idea.
Where's Bob?
Bob.
Bob has left
Oh,
the room.
Bob, the rest of the year, he's never going to let go.
I feel like that instructor at the last day of a conference on the last technical session. Thank you for your attention to this point. So hopefully...
You got to give jokes in. They always have jokes.
So the sanitation department within the city of Goodyear is made up of 6 FTEs. Currently, we're fully staffed at this time. The total operating budget is $5,800,000 plus. Of that, 82% or $4.8 million is the waste management contract that we manage and oversee. The rest of it goes to our bulk and other programs that we manage and maintain. Currently, we have about 25,000 residential accounts that we service on a monthly basis. And to date, we've collected almost 1,827 tons of material in the bulk waste program. Along with the 6 FTEs, we also have 1 temporary employee as well, authorized by the council. Our budget is, again, 5.7. We had one-time supplemental this year that was to purchase a new tractor. We'll talk about that in a minute. One of the highlights that we did this year is we actually created a new position. New FTE was authorized. We turned one of the temporary employees into an FTE, and that showed some efficiencies, and we'll talk about that in a minute. One of the exciting things that happened this year is the collection of over 50,000 pounds at our hazardous waste in the 2014 events and the fall event. Previous to that, there was 25,000 was a record. So we almost doubled the amount of hazardous waste that we took out of the system at that one event. And another highlight that we have is that 99.9% of all of our cycles, recycling containers have been serviced on time as they are needed. So pretty proud of that record as well. Priority-based budgeting. If you're familiar with this pie, there are 11 total programs that are in the sanitation. There are none in the quartile 1 program. Quartile 2 has 4, quartile 3 has 4, and quartile 4 has 3. And the majority of this is in the quartile 2, and that is represented by the waste management contract. We do have a couple of other programs that I want to talk about real briefly. Quartile 3, we do have the Christmas tree program. It's free to the public. We do have 4 sites that we offer this pickup at: Estrella Foothills High School, Pebble Creek, Palm Valley Park, as well as Goodyear Park. And so those are our programs. Several key performance measures. We do track the total expenditures for residential refuse collection. Again, the majority of this is the waste management contract. We touch on the recycling diversion rate, and what this number represents is the amount of recycle that we, the amount of recycling materials that we collect that's actually taken out of the landfill. So we're able to recycle that. We target 25.5%. We hit 24.8%, and we'll continue to target 25%. A lot of that's just result of resident habits, and it's getting the information out there about our recycling program and making sure they understand what the blue bucket or the green bucket means. And so we're doing that. The last one is the tons of bulk trash collected. We had a target of 3,000 pounds of that, and we collected 3,000 tons rather, and we collected 2,638. And we're again looking to target about 2,800 tons in the next year.
Joanne?
Mark, if you were to compare that to when we had the twice a month bulk pickup, did it actually change the tonnage at all?
To be honest with you, I wasn't here when we had the twice a month pickup. I do know that the guys are I have Willie here. If you want the answer, I'll get that answer.
I'm just curious over it. Yeah, and I know he was here.
Right?
He's been waiting.
He's been waiting patiently.
Good one, Willie.
The last presentation is not always the worst.
Yeah. No, your question about the twice a month program to the once a month, we've actually gone down with the once a month program in our tonnage. We were on track to be about 3,500 tons on twice a month.
You had twice? It was
correct.
Okay.
And now that we're on once a month, we've actually dropped down almost 500 to 600 tons.
Okay. Okay, that's very good. Thank you.
Hold on, Willie.
Yes, Bill.
Which then leads to the next question. Do we get tonnage reports from Waste Management?
Yes, we do. We get that on a monthly basis.
So if we're down,
I know where you're going.
Yeah, if we're down 35, from 3,500 to 2,800.
Why are we paying?
Are we up in 700 on the other side? Are people just throwing that stuff in the regular waste, because we're certainly not finding it on the side of the road? So it's got to be going somewhere.
Correct, and that's what we're seeing is more increase in our trash on the tan container. But there's an increase in tonnage in that.
So
But
what
it's-
does that do for our contract with Waste Management? It's not based on tonnage.
Curtis,
It's
or
not
does
based
it-
on tonnage, no. It's just based on the number of containers that are at the household.
And you can see that on the top line where the goal was 4.4 million, and it actually hit 4.5 million. Those are the extra costs that go towards that.
Uh-oh.
So are we really
So-
saving money?
So that's the question. Are we really yes?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm not understanding
just-
that because if it's not based on tonnage,
Right. The contract doesn't charge us by the ton.
Right.
It charges by the number of set of containers that are out at the household.
right?
So the rate that the customer pays is for one trash, one recycling. If there's additional containers, there's an additional charge for those containers.
So whether they're full or empty, we're paying the same
Correct.
cost. So getting to the does it save us money? It certainly does because we're not paying anymore for it.
Right.
Costing
Yeah.
us to do it right.
Okay, so they're still putting it in the trash can and still, okay. Thank you.
So I can still put my clippings in there.
I'll listen to it.
Waste?
No.
Neener, neener,
That's-
neener, neener, neener,
Oh,
neener.
I have a question. Did we
Yeah.
have
Sorry.
a green waste recycling program for a while, or do we still have that, or
In the
Green waste
bulk.
recycling program.
something like that where we had the?
We had it at one time. We're currently not doing that program,
No.
but we're looking at
Yeah.
potentially.
Didn't they
Yes,
take
it
them, they
is.
used that in some of the other farm areas and so forth,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, that was a short term.
I think it was a pilot project or something.
So if we look at some of the FY15 efficiencies that we have, one of the ones that we looked at is our HHW, and we actually reduced what we call the loop time from the time you enter the site to the time you exit, and including all of your reduced disposals. We actually reduced it by a minute. It was a 5-minute route. We get people down to 1 minute, so that's an exciting thing. 20% reduction, so that's an efficiency. The other
Sounds
two-
a lot better than one.
Than 1 minute.
Yeah.
The other two bullets under that are really more workload indicators, but again, we go back to the number of pounds that were removed from through the household waste management program. In 2013, we removed 20,000 pounds of materials, and in 14 we removed 50,000 pounds. So a huge increase there of 30,000, which is about 15 tons of material. And then we had higher number of participants in the from FY13 to 14. In 13 we had 488 folks come through, and in 14 we had 585 folks come through. So the message is getting out there that we have a good program. We do 2 programs. We do one in the fall, which we host, and then the spring one was hosted just March 28th at Avondale. So,
Mark,
sir.
Bill, go ahead.
that's a significant increase, and I can't say that we did more marketing or we advertised any more than we perhaps have done in years past. Do you think changing the location? I mean, do you have any idea why? I mean, it certainly doubled.
I asked Willie about that, and the location has a real big influence on it. The first location was at City Hall.
Right.
It was really hard to get off of Van Buren, get through the parking lot, and do that. Moving it over to the ballpark, working with our good friends at the ballpark. Thank you, Nathan. We're able to again cut down that time, and then people just took advantage of it, and it was actually
Through
better.
there pretty quick.
Yeah. And so we think it was a lot of the location has a lot to do with the results of that as well. The second efficiency we'll talk about real quickly is by converting that one temporary employee, which by definition, temporary employees are just that. They work for a short period of time. We've established, based on our criteria, it takes about 80 days or roughly 16 weeks to get a person to, when he first starts, to actually get comfortable enough to know the route by himself, and we're able to send them out on their own. Since the inception of the temporary staffing program, we've processed 11 individuals, 3 alone in FY15. And so that's a huge, huge investment in trying to train these guys, only to have them, by nature of temporary, they find another job someplace else. So we converted one of those over as a supplemental last year. And what we're able to do is actually pick up an 18% increase in productivity. A typical route for a full-time employee that knows the route is about 4.5 hours, where a temporary was about 5.5 hours. And so we're able to see that reduction in efficiency as well. Supplementals, there was one supplemental last year for the grapple tractor. We did purchase that. We had the sanitation worker was the conversion from the temp to the FTE happened in September. The grapple tractor, we replaced that one. This one was purchased with an enclosed cab. It added a lot of safety features to it because when these guys are putting stuff in the back of the truck and that arm closes down, there's a tendency of some of the materials actually pop back. So with this cab, we add a little safety feature to it. The second thing we did is actually increase productivity because the piece of equipment that we replaced was old and was in the shop a lot. And so now it's on the street and it's working. And so we gained some efficiencies there as well. Challenges and opportunities for the future. Looking ahead, we have 2 contracts that are set to expire on June 30th of 2016. So we'll be renegotiating the bulk disposal fee as well as the container program. We'll be taking on the container program from Waste Management in 2016. Another one is working closely with Waste Management. One of the things that we've noticed with them over the last year is they had a lot of turnover in their drivers. And so what we're seeing is a lot of callbacks, people missing stops or things of that nature only because the new drivers didn't know, so we're managing those. And then, of course, just growth in general. As we grow, we add more to the workforce. And with that.
Any questions?
Just one.
Yes, Joanne.
Mark, when is the waste management contract up again? I know it's pretty long, isn't it? I just don't remember.
We
how
have,
long.
there's 2019.
2019?
June of 2019, but there's an amendment within that contract, which is the container program. That ends in 2016.
Right, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. So
Thank you much
let's
for your
go.
time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you very much.
Mark.
You're welcome.
I'm just assuming you want any events in that conversation. We'll do it the next meeting. Do you have something, Brian, that you'd like to say?
Very briefly, next Monday, just as a reminder, we start at 4:30. There was a slight change on budget presentations. We will be doing asset management. That'll be next Monday. And then the following one on April, and we'll have a special session after that with.
Turned it off.
3 different items.
There you
A special session after the regular council meeting next Monday, so it'll be probably a long one.
Oh.
And then the following week, the 20th, is a work session that's devoted to revenue, expenditures, benefits, compensation. So that'll be on April the 20th. So this is the time of year where we do a lot of things with budget, and absolutely appreciate your patience and your questions and your interaction. It's very helpful.
Well,
So
now
thank
that
you.
we're finished, I just want to thank you and the staff for the presentations. They were really good this year and lots of information, and we have it on our iPads, and that's great. So I really appreciate that. So just to review that, the next meeting is on Monday, April 13th. We will have a work session, a regular meeting, and a special meeting. So isn't that special? So
It is.
yes, absolutely. So meeting adjourned.
Thank you so much, Joy.